In the 2006 Tokyo Game Show, there was a game announced that caught the attention of people online, mainly due to this concept picture that started making rounds, featuring a pink-haired girl displayed on the screens of a Nintendo DS. On the corner of the top screen, you have the sentence "Which check mode?" On the bottom of the lower screen, you have very interesting looking icons, and you can see the character shrieking and saying, "I don't know, I am not a witch." This eventually became a game titled Doki Doki Majo Shinpan, which translates to Heart-Throbbing Witch Trial. A game that gained popularity and to some notoriety because you could do this. People were not only surprised this was on the Nintendo DS, but also surprised when they learned that the people behind it are the company very well known for their fighting games, SNK. I personally learned about this game more than a decade ago due to finding its cover when looking at DS games and really wanting to know what this was about. Before I learned about any rumors or critiques towards what sort of game it even is, like Endgamer magazine, who only gave it a score of no and later named it the worst game of 2007, calling it evil bad. And even seeing all that, I was still interested. Rather, I am the target audience. I feel like throughout the years many people also ended up very curious about this game. There were no plans to ever release this outside of Japan despite them having an English website, which is why I'm here to explain what exactly is this game. Now, despite saying this, every footage you'll be seeing here is from the remake of the game, Doki Majo Plus, released 2 years later, because I finished Doki Doki Majo Shinpan and it felt lacking, but knowing there was a remake, I tried it out and I was actually very pleased with it. So with that said, what story does Doki Doki Majo Shinpan tell? It all starts with our protagonist, Nishimura Akuji, getting dragged back home from school alongside the class chairman and someone who he's acquainted with for many years, Abe Maria, in a fully voiced introduction.
それにクラスの問題児の監督役だって立派なクラス委員の仕事でしょ。
問題児か。俺もようやく由緒正しいちょいワルとして認識され始めたようだな。
She suggests he should find something in life that would make his heart throb, and they part ways. He thinks living in peace as someone who's just a little bit bad is preferable, but when he starts thinking about it, he looks up to the sky and ends up being transported to this heavenly place, where he meets what can just be called a lightly dressed angel.
誰がハンダですか？
He is given the mission to find witches in his city, but they don't know what sort of witches or how dangerous they are, so they appoint him the task of finding that out, due to the fact that an angel would be noticed by the witches. Of course, he refuses, but the angel, who is actually an archangel, threatens him with imprisonment, and he accepts so he can return back home. The archangel appoints this little navigation angel called Lulu to accompany and keep an eye on Akuji.
言いたいことはわかるですよ。何せこのルル様でさえ時々ムラムラっとくる体ですからね。
If he tries to trick the angels and not do his work, he'll have to repent by becoming an incredibly virtuous person. They bring up an old man who 32 years ago was turned into one after failing a mission given to him by the angels. Every morning he leaves his house open and unlocked so anyone can use it. Every morning while heading to work he prays to the gods of the angels for a few hours. He takes part in an association promoting peace with the heaven and space, a cult. Any sort of donation drive he sees, he takes part in it. He has no savings for he donates it all. Every night while going back home, he once again prays to the god of the angels for another few hours. Akuji doesn't want to become like that. He is frequently called throughout the game as a little bit bad, and he treats that as his identity. So he has no choice but to undertake the mission. And so he becomes Lulu's servant, and his new heart-throbbing everyday life hunting witches begins. At his school, Lulu is looking at the first witch suspect from afar, as informed by them by the angel world. To Akuji, she looks like just another person. normal by moe character standards. Akuji wants to approach her, but Lulu stops him because they first need to find proof of her being a witch so she just doesn't run away. This is Akai Maho, member of the cheerleading team and quite popular around school. Wow, that's a face. And so we're introduced to some simple features of the game. Map movement, scenery investigation where you can switch characters to see their reactions to things, reverse panda collectibles, which are these creatures spread throughout the game that the more you collect, the more rewards you obtain by the end of it, and the more rare kimos, which are these fish creatures. As an example of the investigation mode, in Akuji's classroom, you investigate a crystal ball to which the class chairman stops you from touching it. She is the president of the occult club and tells you that the school is filled with magic power. Akuji also asks Maria what she knows about Akai Maho, and she tells you that she has never been seen wearing casual clothing and always stay in school until late. Akuji doesn't want her to know about witches, since she wouldn't shut up about it, so he decides to head to the cheerleading club for more leads. Lulu just wants to see bare legs.
地区大会突破おめでとうございます。この調子で頑張ってください。
Akuji approaches two other members, the blonde Yukarishi Yukari, who's Akuji's classmate, and the small Daisen Chio, who starts calling Akuji a stalker. According to them, Maho is a bright and honest good girl, who's following the steps of her mother who also worked cheering people. First to get to school, last to leave, probably lives near, but they never return home with her, so they're not sure. With that information in hand, Lulu tells Akuji they should follow her around and they should go through her stuff. That is not the face of an angel. She also explains along the way that she can make herself invisible to others, and her voice is heard only to those who can see her, which she uses throughout the game to talk with Akuji and to peep on girls. It does look like he's talking to himself though. So they arrive at the girls' changing room and Lulu gently opens the locked door. My goodness, that is not the face of an angel. And so Akuji starts calling Lulu Old Man Angel. She also tries to steal everything scattered across the room. They find Maho's bag, and inside there's a picture that looks like her but not exactly, likely to be her mother. Lulu uses her magical 3-minute camera to take a picture of it and they leave. Akuji chases Lulu because she did end up taking a few things, and he bumps into a girl who arrived at the school. Although not hurt, she demands him to help her get up while berating him. Akuji refuses, but Maho appears and helps her.
どうして？あなたには何の関係もないのに。でも立ち上がりたいって思ったんですよね。あなたがそう思ったからその応援をしただけです。マホは頑張る人の味方なんです。マホ様。
Akuji ends up apologizing, but she has an attitude. And from here on, you start getting more full map movement, where you can pick any events you want. The game works in 3 period days: morning, evening, and after school, that can be skipped by heading back to his house and sleeping on the couch. There are events that progress the main story, that raises affinity with characters, or simply feature side characters such as Akuji's class teacher who loves to run, or Akuji's classmate Masaru, who is a fairy otaku. Examples of an affinity event is Akuji going to the food court, finding Maria there with a tray of curry, and Akuji pleads her to give it to him. Throughout the game you get many glimpses of Akuji's obsession with curry, and Maria gives in because they're actually childhood friends. Maria warns him about his little bit bad ways, but Akuji tells her not to worry about it. He thanks her for everything and leaves a surprised Maria behind. Another one is Maria feeling down because she wanted to go UFO watching, but the weather was bad, so Akuji can offer to return home with her, all the way to her house this time, to try cheering her up a little bit. Yep, Akuji's taller compared to a long time ago, isn't that right, Maria? Back to the main story, Akuji and Lulu follow Maho and find her feeding stray cats. Lulu takes a picture. Maho then goes into the gym storage room but never ends up coming out. Upon inspection, the door is actually locked and Lulu couldn't sense anyone inside anymore. Akai Maho just disappeared without a trace. The next day, Akuji comes early, awaiting Maho's arrival to school, but according to Yukari, Maho had already arrived. Back on the storage room, Maria appears and they talk about the rumors of Maho appearing and disappearing, which excites her occult-loving side. She gives us the idea of getting the key to the storage room and part ways. That's exactly what we do, we get that key. They wait for her to get into the storage room again, and when Akuji unlocks the door, no one's inside. The only way someone could have left was through the small window on the back, but someone with Maho's size couldn't have gotten out. For now, Lulu takes a picture of the window. Although they do know she's been leaving the school, they don't know how or why no one has ever seen her outside the school. Akuji and Lulu head to the shopping district after school to buy food, and Lulu becomes infatuated with wave beans, which is the angel road name for edamame beans, and Ifron, which is the angel road version of beer. It's fine for her to consume it since she's a 10,008-year-old angel. While Lulu is getting drunk, Akuji comes across a little girl taking a look at a coffee shop showcase. She then heads to the fish store, asking for the cheapest thing she can get that's nutritious. She can't afford the tuna the owner suggests, so she gets some Pacific sorry. The owner gives her some extra as well on the house.
みんな、今日はごちそうなんだよ。いつもパンや牛乳ばっかりでごめんね。これからはお魚とかもできるだけ持ってくるね。
あいつはちゃんと食べてるのかな。
After Lulu takes a picture of the girl, Akuji approaches her and she lets you pet the cat. And you do with the stylus. Instead of the cat, I ended up petting her a little bit, maybe a little bit too much, and then I petted the cat. And so they part ways. There are some optional side stories where you meet this girl again in the shopping district. One where she's looking at a poster to an amusement park and then suggests a shop that sells cheap canned mackerel. And when it gets too late, Akuji tells her she should go back home to not worry the other people in her house. She doesn't react very well to that. Later another day, she's looking at the poster again, a magic country theme park. Akuji tells her it should be fine for her to ask her mother to take her there. She also doesn't react well to that. Akuji changes topics about how their parfait is famous. She saw something similar before in the coffee shop. The girl thanks Akuji for trying to cheer her up and they part ways. Back at the school, Akuji and Lulu return to the storage room. Lulu checks if people can come and go without being noticed, then throws up from flying too much with the alcohol inside of her. But yes, someone could do it with the little window on the back. Going on a tangent, there were some cool side stories in this chapter, such as Akuji and Lulu writing down side dishes. Akuji shows the list to Maria, who calls him a pervert because side dish can also mean material in Japanese. Another one where Lulu takes Akuji to the audio-visual room and plays a DVD of lewd sounding lines she recorded from watching TV. Maria barges in and scolds Akuji, calling him a pervert. She does this a lot throughout the game, and it all ends with Lulu's hard work being taken away by Maria. Who here knows about DVD? DVD? It's a meme from a hentai manga where a boy breaks the other adult DVD, so his sister repays him for it. And they're just screaming DVD! DVD! Throughout the whole thing. What a crazy thing to reference in this game. Back to the main story, Akuji asks Lulu if there could be witches with the power to transform. Lulu wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, so Akuji concludes Akai Maho and the little girl are the same person, which explains her appearing and disappearing by transforming into a smaller form and leaving throughout the window. But most importantly, both of them had kind eyes. Lulu gives Akuji the Angel Blade, a blade that causes no physical damage, spiritual damage only. Witches won't admit themselves that they're witches, so fighting should be inevitable. They wait until it's nighttime for Akai Maho to go into the storage room to confirm the theory with her own eyes. Maho panics and mentions witches herself, but still won't admit she's won, so the inevitable fight begins. In the end of every chapter, you have a fight with the witch suspect. In Akai Maho's case, she'll move left and right and attack using energy balls, which can reflect back to her by swiping them. Sometimes she attacks with 2 of them. This will be your main way of damaging her. She will also summon small magic cats that you have to slice it a few times, otherwise they will damage you, and very once in a while, she'll summon fish cans that damage you when a big one falls. By holding the stylus and letting it go, you can summon Lulu to perform an attack, which is the other way you can damage Maho. However, this attack can be blocked by either the cats or the falling cans, and it also costs MP, and when you run out of it, you can't use it anymore. You're eventually able to perform a special attack by filling up a bar, by dealing damage to the opponent, dealing with stage hazards, or even getting damaged. Usually the fight's not really hard.
魔法はもうダメです。
However, even after losing and using magic in the fight, Maho still denies everything. To fully prove she's a witch, somewhere in her body is a witch crest. To make that witch crest show itself, Akuji wears a bracelet with the power to disturb the heart of a witch, and to make it visible he has to make their heart throb, usually by touch feel. He is threatened to go through with it, and so begins the witch trial, the segment that made this series of games so well known almost 2 decades ago. So you have 5 icons on the bottom: touch, look, blow. The binoculars are a special kind of look, and the book brings up the items you gather throughout the chapter. The touch feature is self-explanatory. You touch the suspected witch to raise their heartthrob gauge. However, different places lead to different reactions. For example, touching her hair or her neck leads to a normal reaction, when touching her ear is quite effective, as shown by her closing her eyes. And of course, there will be places that will lead to negative reactions, which will release a blue heart instead of a pink one. And if you touch the same place too many times, you also receive a negative reaction. In this mode, you can also rub, which is counted as a different action as just touching. The look and blow features work pretty much the same in terms of getting score. However, of course, the suspect's reaction will differ since the actions are different. And on the blow feature, you have to blow on your Nintendo DS, which I am definitely holding. The binoculars icon only becomes available if you get too many negative reactions, and when you use it, it focuses on a point of interest of the character, and every touch you do leads to a positive reaction, as a sort of way to help you get back in your feet. The item icon shows the suspect the items you gathered. For example, showing Chibi Maho's picture will make her deny it's her, and showing her mom's picture will make her a little bit sad. Every witch trial has 4 stages, each with a different pose. The initial stage is actually the second stage, because if you start getting too many negative reactions, you fall into the stage where the suspect is loathing you. You can see you're there by the blue background, and if you keep on that path, you fail the witch trial, which looks like this.
そんな人だったなんて見損ないました。
And then you get a game over where you can see Akuji was turned into a virtuous person for failing his mission. Once in a while, you also get the mascot of Neo Geo Pocket, Neo Poke-kun, falling from the cliff after being pushed by a reverse panda. The game just puts you back into the witch trial though, so there's not much problem if you fail. Rather, if you fail a witch trial, 99% chance you did it on purpose. Oh, you bad boys and girls. Just a little bit bad though. As the witch trial progresses smoothly, you get put into 2 new further stages of likability. Now, here's to make the witch trial even more fun. We have custom secret animations. In Maho's witch trial, on her first stage, as long as she's not covering them, if you touch her chest 4 times... Wow! Video games are fun! If you blow her skirt 3 times, it flutters. If you rub her belly 4 times, it lifts her shirt a little bit. On the loathing stage, if you blow her skirt 3 times, it flutters up as well. For Maho, her first good stage doesn't have any custom animations, but her last one also has the same chest one where if you touch it 4 times, it jiggles. And this time, if you blow her skirt 3 times, she holds it down. The last notable thing to point out is that if you get an enough high combo of positive reactions, you're presented with a yellow background where any actions you take, anywhere, will lead into a positive reaction. After progressing with the witch trial enough, her expression will change and her eyes start quivering a little bit. And that's when the witch crest appears. In Maho's case, it's on her thigh.
私知りません。魔女じゃありません。
With the proof that Maho is a witch, Lulu makes Akuji sign a contract with Maho, thus sending Maho's magical powers to the Archangel through him. This all was for the sake of reporting her existence to the Angel World, so nothing more is really happening to Maho, although she is now Akuji's servant under this contract. Maho sees that Akuji is kinder and more hardworking than she thought, so she wants to support him and help him in his mission. They introduce themselves to each other once again and decide to celebrate their new formed group in her house. Yeah, you probably saw something like this coming. She can't offer them sweets, but she does have canned fish. Akuji asks if she wants to go out for a little bit and takes her to a coffee shop. He asks why she came to this world, but she didn't want to get into that. The waitress brings Akuji's order, coffee and a banana cream parfait, which he gives to Maho, the first one she ever had. When parting ways, Akuji asks her if she wants to come live with him, so she doesn't stay alone. He sensed that she came to this road to look for her mother, and they could end up coming across her when searching for other witches. Akuji as well wants to support Maho. She ends up accepting, and so Akuji, Lulu, and Maho start living together. And so, end first chapter. How nice. Now before I progress, I want to talk about yet another mode in Doki Majo Plus. As the game progresses, you unlock something called Sweets Communication. This is a mode where you go to the room of your heroine of choice to deepen your relationship with them. You have 4 icons. The first one is the Exploration 2, where you can look around the room or engage with the heroine directly. The passive icon leads to the heroine starting a conversation with you. The Touc icon is the highlight of the mode. The top screen changes into a book that lists a bunch of lines that you can say directly into your microphone to see the heroine's reaction. The last icon is the active icon, and it only becomes available when you interact enough with the heroine, and it kinda works as a level up to your relationship with her. The further you get, the more lines you unlock to say, and some interactions lead to different results, now that the heroine is more comfortable with Akuji. Eventually they change positions as well into a more relaxed one. The top screen in this case reflects the heartbeat of Akuji. The bigger the height of the heartbeat, the deeper the relationship between the two of them. The screen is also used to show his reactions, because the lines that come across the screen represents the voice of his heart. For example, the moment he enters Maho's room, the line "It smells like Maho" comes across. I wish I paid more attention to the top screen, but honestly my reading speed wasn't fast enough to keep track. It really is a way to learn more about the heroine. Later on, you can even start taking the chosen heroine to dates in various places, and the more and more you progress with the relationship, you eventually unlock the final event where you can share a kiss with them, which then leads into...
Akuji-san, Maho, 幸せです。本当に幸せです。夢みたいです。
And roll credits. The game ends. I'm not joking, you can get an ending with like 10% of the game done. And after the credits end, you unlock the gallery and the free sweets mode, where you can play the sweets communication with the girls you finish with. The real pleasure of things like this is to take your time interacting with your heroine of choice. Might be just a little bit too hard to see the appeal from seeing someone just giving you small snippets of it. Also, this side mode is its own separate thing. Progression in sweets communication doesn't affect how much a heroine likes you in the main game. Now to chapter 2. The Nishimura household receives a call from Abe Maria. She wants to talk to Akuji. On the way there, the girl who Maho helped get up appears, calling her Maho-sama, and introduces herself as Kanan Kiara. Maho gets motorboated and they run away to school. After they part ways, Maria appears asking Akuji if he is hiding something from her. Suddenly being intimate with Maho is suspicious. Rumors about her leaving Akuji's house have been going around as well. Maria guesses the reason for all that is because Maho is a witch. Because Akuji was into them a long time ago, and so she takes upon herself to prove Maho is one. Lulu doesn't care if Maho's identity gets known, but she thinks Maria's intuition might be too good, so she as well might be a witch. The next day, when Akuji arrives to school, Maho passed out on morning training and was taken to the infirmary. There, we are introduced to a new character, the big-breasted blonde Seiya Eve. My goodness gracious, what an outfit. She seems to like the heart-shaped opening, and she talks in quite suggestive ways. As a matter of fact, she speaks in double meanings the whole entire game. Eve-sensei certifies Akuji that Maho will be fine, but there is something that caused a negative reaction on her, so she asks Akuji to check her classroom for anything unusual. In the class 2D, he asks one of the students if this was her class. The student points to Maho's table and leaves us. Turns out that Maho's table is covered in amulets of all sorts. Lulu feels power emanating from them, and Akuji removes them with the power of the touchscreen. This is probably the reason Maho collapsed. They also go check her belongings in the girls' changing room, but the door is still broken. If you examine the shoes, Lulu smells them and likes it. Also, Hanako-san seems to be living inside one of the lockers. This is all just flavor text, and it is one of the charm points of games like this. They find Maho's bag and take anything that seems suspicious. Back at Akuji's house, Maho got better, but still, the amulets might have been the work of another witch. So Akuji and Lulu had to find out who caused this. They head to the school shop, run by a China girl, quite an exotic shop, and this shop sells amulets used to detect witches, according to the shop owner, and she makes Akuji buy some, which he gives in because it might help with the investigation. If they find out who bought them, they should find out the culprit. Suddenly Kiara appears again, and she stayed with Maho when she was passed out in the infirmary. She also doesn't like Akuji at all, and seems to be aware of how the amulets work. Interesting. Akuji heads back to the school shop that sells all sorts of things, besides pencils, erasers, and notebooks. He asks who bought those amulets. The shop owner tells him after making him buy a book on magic circles, and turns out it was Abe Maria, who also got the same book. Akuji and Lulu head to the science room to check the contents of Maho's bag, but before they could do that, Maria comes, since this is also the occult research club room, and she goes through Akuji's bag finding amulets. She takes them as evidence Akuji is doing something regarding witches. She looks further into the bag, finding more evidence in the form of the underwear of the cheerleading club that Lulu put in there. Maria confiscates Akuji's bag, and so he chases her to get it back. On the skirmish, they end up tripping, and they might have shared an accidental kiss, although Akuji didn't notice. From that, she runs away with the bag, but gives it back later with the amulet. She also returns a book that belongs to Lulu, with writings about witch searchings and diary entries. She leaves, but not entirely. She spies on them and sees Akuji and Maho talk to something, which only makes her more suspicious. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of time to mention some cool side stories of this chapter. Lulu tries to show off her powers to Akuji by going through a tree. She gets stuck with her bare ass hanging out. Lulu tries to show off she was popular with the boys in the Angel Road, but ends up revealing she never even held hands with one. Akuji offers to hold her hand until they get to the classroom. A wholesome side story where Akuji gives Eve-sensei a back massage. A story where Lulu harasses Maho with a chikuwa. You can choose to stop her. I didn't. Very tasteful censor of the word chikuwa there. I wonder what it could be misunderstood as. A story where they meet a cat-eared elementary school girl in the food court. She gets pissed at Akuji and spits watermelon seeds at him. Lulu keeps giving food to Maho in an attempt to architect her into an even more voluptuous girl in the future. Akuji can be for or against that. I chose 4. A wholesome side story where Akuji helps Eve-sensei to change a lamp. one where Akuji is jealous of Chiyo and Maho's kinship. I'm mentioning the more twisted ones because they're fun, but there are still, basic, more wholesome ones that are more focused on the heroines. Back to the main story, there's a big magic circle drawn on Akuji's seat. Lulu takes a picture because she thinks it might be the work of a witch. The circle affects Maho and she can't approach Akuji due to it, so he erases it with the angel sword. When they're looking into the magic circle, Maria appears, wondering if the person who drew it could be a witch, but Akuji quickly leaves. That is not enough to stop Abe Maria though, for she is motivated to get any sort of information from Akuji. Lulu is pretty convinced that Maria is a witch, but Akuji thinks he would have noticed if his childhood friend was one and she's just an occult freak. But they still decide to gather more information. They head to the science room to talk to the only other occult research club member who noted from late night phone calls that Maria has been going out outside every night. Apparently she's been sneaking into the school, so they decide to do a stakeout to confront her. So inside the school, oh that's creepy, oh that's a face looking at us, I don't like this. Maho gets freaked out by the anatomy doll and blasts it off, which allows the group to get a clear view of a person running across, and they chase them until they get to the rooftop where there is a huge magic circle being drawn, and next to it, unsurprisingly, it's Abe Maria, who knows of Akuji's identity of witch investigator. Akuji just doesn't want to have anything to do with this, but Lulu gets mad at him since there's a witch right in front of him, revealing herself and surprising Maria seeing that angels are real. Lulu wants to perform the witch trial on her, and Maria is actually really into the idea of joining their group, and all they have to do is fight. If she loses, they'll perform the witch trial and she'll join them. If he loses, he'll join her. And so the fight starts.
本格的になってきたじゃない。それじゃ、行くわよ。
So Maria's fight goes something like this. She throws flasks at you that you can break by slicing them. She also throws bombs at you, which you can throw back. These stay out for a while and cause considerable amount of damage when going out. When her HP goes down more, she even starts kicking the bombs back at you. Sometimes she throws yellow flasks, and these paralyze you for a little bit on impact, and to get out, you have to rub the screen or mash buttons. Sometimes she summons barriers to stop your ranged attacks, and if you slice them a few times, they will fall over. On this fight, you're now also able to use Maho, which is nice because if you run out of MP on Lulu, you can switch to Maho and send magic missiles or do her fish can attack. The only downside is that you can only use the Angel Blade if you have Lulu selected.
そんな大魔女の魔力が抜けていく。
As you can see, there was no magic. It was just a bunch of stuff Maria concocted on the science room and some cardboard cutouts. She is not a witch. There's not even magic power emanating from the magic circle. It's not even the same magic circle that was on Akuji's desk. She wasn't the one who drew that circle. Her whole motivation for this began when she took Akuji's bag and found Lulu's diary. After learning about everything, she decided, I want to be part of this, and tried to make herself appear to be a witch. Lulu still can't accept it, mostly because revealing her identity to an unrelated party will be problematic to her, so she's determined to progress with the witch trial. Maria really wants to receive the witch trial. She doesn't know what it is, by the way. Maho feels like not doing the witch trial would be pitiful, so with no choice remaining, Akuji performs the witch trial. So, what can we do here? There's not really anything custom on the loading stage, and the binoculars focuses on her chest covered by her hands. On the initial stage, if you rub her socks 4 times, you slide them down. If you touch her chest 3 times, it jiggles. On the first good stage, if you blow on her skirt 3 times, it flutters. On her second good stage as well, if you blow on her skirt 4 times, it flutters. Now this one you have to be fast. If you touch both shoulders and bend the cloth on her chest in succession, you remove it, showing off her bare shoulders. And this is what happened when you fail the witch trial.
変態。本当は探す気なんてないんでしょう。
Wow, video games are fun, but how did we get here? That's the interesting thing. Doki Doki Majo Shinpan was never meant to be something like this. It was initially conceptualized as a phone game called Ruru Majo Saiban. Rule Witch Judgment. A wordplay game with the objective of tricking witches into saying their real name, and if they do, they become your servant. That is the rule. The character you're seeing on screen is called Kimoto Tomoyo, and although she never ended up being used for anything, parts of her design were used on one of the creator's other game, Frisha Rosemary in Twinkle Star Sprite's La Petite Princesse for the PS2. The creator of the series, Matsushita Yoshiyasu, was told that Witch Judgment was a very easy to understand concept and he should develop that. Much later, he was given the proposition of turning the game real for the Nintendo DS, where he wanted to put focus on the touchpad and ended up coming up with the Witch Check mode, which was faced with good reception by the higher-ups. And it all eventually became Doki Doki Majo Shinpan. Interesting enough, the game also ended up having a mobile port like it was originally planned. Well, returning to the witch trial, here's the crest. That's not a witch crest. That's not a witch crest at all.
喜びなさい。大魔女マリア様の誕生よ。
Maria is still adamant in being recognized as a witch, but no shot. Lulu starts panicking and decides that to cover up her mistake from the angel world, she'll proceed with the contract to make Maria a witch, even if just by name. And with this, Maria joins the group in the witch hunting ordeals as Akuji's new servant. It is also revealed that Maria first started getting into witches and the occult because when they were kids, Akuji said he wanted to marry a girl who can use magic. Although she says it too quietly, so Akuji doesn't get to remember it. Maria starts calling him by Akuji instead of Nishimura, and so this chapter is done. And you also quickly unlock her sweet's communication. Maria's sweet communication focuses on the fact that the two of them have known each other for a long time. She remembers a lot from the past. It also plays on her occult mania, with several mysterious things happening as you check around the room. She gets happy if you tell her to experiment on you, she reacts badly to anything pervy, but reacts well to anything that alludes to them forming a relationship. And of course, eventually you get to the point of confession and marriage ending.
私と悪事がこんな縁だったなんて。どんな予言よりも素敵だわ。私を一生離さないでね。
Off to chapter 3. So the group receives information about the next witch, printed in the back of a pamphlet. Pretty much 100% chance she's a witch. It is a girl called Oda Renge, who is on the same class as Maho, although she doesn't remember her well. Coincidentally, they find the girl clothes.
これプレビアついで高いデブよ。一回でいいだらけんけどアドンでみたいです。
She is an otaku, in this case, a game otaku. She is also fast on her feet, so the group loses her. Maho later remembers some interactions with her where she always used game-related jargon, so Akuji has a plan to lure Oda Renge using an old game cartridge, more specifically Psycho Soldier released in 1986 by SNK, that he obtained by trading it with Lulu's, and he sets up the trap. And the trap works! Lulu lures Renge inside the gym storage room and they confront her about being a witch, but she denies it, or rather, she doesn't even seem to understand what we're talking about. Lulu brings up the possibility of her being a witch that forgot her memories and had her powers sealed. So they need to awaken them, and for that to happen, Renge needs to boost her concentration powers. Lulu tells her to focus on Akuji's action, for he will perform a witch trial to help her revive those powers. Wow, this soon? Well, I'm not against that. Video games are fun. Renge doesn't seem to care about what's happening though, and not caring she is. No matter what you do, she reacts badly.
こんなことをやっていては母上に叱られるのですよ。
Renge is not collaborating, and it's not like she would be interested in awakening powers that she doesn't even know or care about, so for now, Renge returns home, almost taking Akuji's game with her. Oh, Renge. Later, they come up with the plan of making her concentrate using games. This girl has game brain. She just starts talking about the first Neo Geo mascot, G-Mento, out of nowhere. Honestly, I don't know much about games myself. I'm learning about all this seeing her talk about it. Either way, she doesn't really go along with her plans because she's training to take down her fated rival in a game tournament, who appears a little after she leaves us. This is Tange Genta, Renge's rival. After being surprised by the size of Majo's chest, he reveals why he's here. He has devised a secret skill to take Renge down in the next tournament and came here to give her a challenge ladder and claiming that after he wins, he's going to steal her everything. Picture on screen by Akuji's imagination. The group looks for Renge, but when they find her, their path gets blocked by a barrier. It seems it was created after Renge passed through the corridor. They got to take down the barrier before they lose her, so Majo offers to erase it with her magic. The only problem is the old man on the corner, which you have to move it out of the way. Or not, if you examine him enough times, Lulu gets annoyed and tells Majo to just blast him along the barrier. Well, what matters is that Renge is seemingly awakening her powers due to her training, even if unaware. They find her on the music room and she talks about the things she's doing to train her concentration. For example, splitting a melon in two by tapping it in high speeds. The tournament she is preparing for is for the extremely popular shooting game Star Radish, which was released in 1986 for the Nanicon, which the normie Akuji knows nothing about.
レンゲドじとめで見ちゃうですん。
Well, of course, the Nanicon doesn't exist. It is a parody of the Famicom. This is all fake. Lulu brings an angelic tool that came with a magazine, which is not even hers, because she took it from one of her juniors. It can measure magic power, and Renge is 40% into awakening them. Might as well just let her keep doing her training. Renge came to the music room to forge her finger movements using the piano, though the song she wants to play, it's written down in an old school game magazine, the Manga, which is a parody of the Family Computer magazine, aka the Famimaga. She also starts talking about another game magazine, Beep, which is a parody of the game magazine Beep. Akuji and the others go to her desk that has notebooks filled with handwritten game walkthroughs and game ideas. Akuji finds a quite thin dictionary, but when he removes the cover, surprise, it is the magazine. And on the removed cover you could see written in small letters, countermeasure for mom. Inside is Nanimaga. Oh, Renge. Also, Lulu seems to be happy with one of the magazine articles. Oh, Lulu. They return to the music room, but Renge is taking a nap, and Akuji can't wake her up, so Majo suggests playing the song to awaken her. Are you kidding? What? I can't do this. What is this? What is a moderato? What am I even supposed to play? Well, thankfully, if you fail enough times, Majo plays the song for you. Oh yeah, of course. There she goes. That's enough to wake the game otaku up. Oh my goodness, she's geeking out about game music sheets printed in old game magazines. I'm not even going to try translating this. And now she's making references to an old SNK game, Sasuke vs. Commander. I have no idea what she's talking about. Anyways, just by hearing the SNK jingle, her mastery went up more. The next day, Renge is waiting for Akuji and drags him into a game center for the sake of getting hands-on training. Lulu gets stuck in a candy machine while trying to steal some, so they sit down to play some Star Radish together. She even brings a manual for the Nanicom version so Akuji can learn how to play, which you can actually go through in-game. And so Star Radish begins, which is actually a fully playable game. One fun thing about Star Radish is that it was announced by SNK Playmore in 2009 for April Fools, where a website for it was open, claiming it was a game created in 1986 by Mikado Soft for the number one Ninki computer, which means number one popular computer, the Nanicon, created in 1983. It was on a later date that it was revealed This was all made for the sake of Doki Majo Plus. You look at all this and you might get a bit surprised, because you might not have expected all this retro game stuff in Doki Doki Majo Shinpan, or rather Doki Majo Plus. Well, this is all because the creator of the series, Matsushita Yoshiyasu himself, is a retro game maniac. So he made Renge to be specifically like this. I don't personally have much to say about Star Radish because I'm not much of a gamer myself, but while playing, Renge says some lines once in a while, and when major events happen, she also gives some comments as if she's playing on the machine next to you, which in the story she is. When you get to the rankings, you can see Renge and Genta's rivalry in display by the scores, and if you get a top 10 placement, when you write your name down, if you just mash and put it as AAA, Renge gets mad at you and changes it to AKJ for Akuji.
手抜きはダメですね。
Renge manages to develop her new deadly technique and her meter goes up to 90%. The next day, the group comes to the game center to root for Renge, who is prepared to take down the previous champion, Genta, and after a fierce battle, she comes up on top. And with that, Renge recovers her magic powers, but Lulu is on her day off, so they leave that for the next time. Renge gives Genta the tournament prize for giving her a good match, a Golden Star Radish cartridge. However, he still hasn't given up on making Renge's precious thing, Oliver, his. And then she cries because she wanted to play with the golden cartridge. Yeah, she's just like that. Now, before we progress, here's some side stories. One that introduces a new chef for the food court, Shino, who can only cook poisonous foods. One where you head to school with Maria and she suggests awakening Akuji in the morning, the childhood friend staple. A wholesome scene where Eve Sensei is peeling pears, a wholesome scene where Akuji plays shogi with Eve Sensei, a scene where Akuji and Kiara keep blocking each other trying to pass through, a scene where Chiyo gets 16 on a test and wants to be treated for getting double-digit scores, a scene where Akuji steals Maria's glasses by Lulu's request and he hides in the locker of the girls' changing room, a scene where Lulu makes an erotic collage with Maho's face, a scene where Maria makes some suspicious medicine meant for Akuji, and when Lulu drinks it, she becomes two and starts making a racket all over school. Okay, back to Renge. She is invited to the gymnasium to perform the witch trial, however her defense powers come to play due to her awakening too much, so Lulu brings up the idea of having a fight. Renge is into it actually and even wants to go back home to change into some cosplay. Apparently she has an Athena costume that she made herself. Athena being Princess Athena from SNK's 1986 arcade game Athena. I wouldn't mind that, but Akuji just wants to get on with it, and so the fight starts.
やる気満々なのですよ。
Renge is the first opponent that gets close to you, which is nice because you can then hit her with the Angel Blade. Oh my god, look at her go! Her main form of attack is just slamming her big forehead into you, which you can interrupt with a slash. If you attack her with Maho's magic missile, she can set up a barrier against it, so it might be preferable to attack with Maria. Maria has 3 attacks. If you hold and release, she'll send a flask. If you hold longer, she sends a flask that can paralyze the enemy. And touching the screen sends a bomb. However, the bomb takes forever to go out and you can't switch to other characters while an attack is out, so sometimes it's inconvenient. Eventually she'll start charging an attack which you have to interrupt by hitting her or with Maria's paralyzing flask. Otherwise, your best bet is to set up some of Maria's bombs and hope they get blocked by them. Maria's ultimate attack also leads to the opponent's movement slowing down, and eventually you win. It's not really that hard of a fight.
コンティニューはできないのですかね。
With Renge weakened, we can now proceed with the witch trial. There's not really anything special you can do on the loathing stage, and the binoculars focus on her ass. The following stages, you get some of the usual chest few times into jiggle and blow skirt few times into flutter combo. But on the second good stage, if you touch, rub, and then touch the skirt, you remove the pin, making the skirt become undone. At the end, there is her witch crest on her big forehead. It's the goddamn Neo Geo logo.
レンゲ丼の体に力が。
A contract is formed, and so Renge becomes a servant to Akuji. They introduce each other again, and Renge shortens Akuji's name into Neopoke-kun. But when Akuji protests that, she starts calling him Atan. Also, Renge's precious thing that Genta mentioned referred to Renge's Neo Geo ROM cartridges, and Lulu's that Akuji traded for the Psycho Soldier cartridge was just Lulu's beer. Renge starts visiting his house, bringing games to play with him as she sees him as someone she can trust, and so the SNK Retro Game Otaku joins the group. Naturally, Renge also has a Sweets communication. However, to unlock hers, you have to go through some efforts. If you remember when Lulu says she's on a break, that's just an excuse to give the player freedom to roam the map and complete anything they want to before the end of the chapter. If you visit the game center, you can even come back to play more Star Radish. However, the point of interest is going to the shopping district and use the machine on the left. You would either learn about this examining every element of the background or visiting the game log where Kiara uses the machine, giving you a clue where you can obtain items from it. It gives you a bunch of trash, erasers, broken toys, dog licenses, whatever the hell this is, but if you keep going, it eventually gives you a Golden Star Radish cartridge, which apparently in-universe is a rare game cartridge because it was given out by lottery for people who bought a certain brand of instant noodles in 1986, according to a blog post written by Renge. The cartridge is very easy to miss. You can only visit the shopping district after school, and the game even tells you to go back home if you're holding too much trash, so you have to return on a later day to try to keep getting it. However, if you have this golden cartridge before Renge's witch trial, as a matter of fact, you can even show it to her on the witch trial, which gets her very excited. On the end of the chapter, Akuji gives it to her and she plays it sitting right next to him. She's having fun playing with others, so she invites Akuji to go to her house anytime, unlocking her Sweets communication. And this is her room. She's not even looking at you. It is kinda what you would expect. A lot of this Sweets communication makes references to SNK games, and she doesn't respond too strongly to romance. She also doesn't respond well to the word study. Her mom also seemed to be quite strict on her. The first time Akuji has to leave is because her mom set up how long a friend is allowed to be there. Eventually she becomes more aware of Akuji, and naturally, all progresses into...
にゅあーたん、何ですかに？レンゲ堂はあーたんのお嫁さんになったんですに。
And now to chapter 4. The group is told to go to a temple because Lulu received the next target from the Angel Road. Kinda, it's a paper that just says Miko. Conveniently, the temple only has one Miko, the current suspected witch, Mido Ayame, who is also Akuji and Maria's classmate. She has always been distant from the other classmates, so approaching her is hard, but she notices we're observing her and makes Akuji identify himself.
名前は？君の名前は何かと聞いている。はい、西村悪事です。
He gets overwhelmed by her to have any proper conversation. The group gathers to talk about Ayame. Well, Akuji didn't know about it because a certain angel forgot to tell him. Ayame always stays distant from others, so Lulu finds that suspicious. There are also rumors of people hearing her speak when she's by herself in the rooftop, so they head there and they end up hearing someone speaking a little bit too energetically to be Ayame. Lulu forces the group out, and there, they're faced with her. She claims to just be looking at the sky, but when Akuji mentions hearing her speaking, she panics a little bit and tells them to forget about it and leave us. Kiara also goes up to the rooftop to enjoy Maho a little bit and then leave us. How free-spirited. So we're left wondering who was Ayame talking to. Akuji's kinda scared of her, so approaching her is hard. All they can do now is learn more about Ayame. In front of the clock tower of the school, she's reading a book with a bright smile on her face. The gang is interested in knowing what the book is, so Lulu heads to the broadcasting room to call Ayame to the staff room. She leaves her stuff behind and they go through her possessions. One of them being the book she was reading, Princess Sakura and the 8 Peaches, a picture book with a cute design. Lulu comes back and takes a picture, but Ayame comes back too and asks if they saw the contents of the book and demands Akuji to forget about it. In front of the gym storage room, Akuji and Lulu spot Ayame looking at something and calling it cute. It's Chibi Majo feeding the stray cats. Ayame notices Akuji and asks if he has any business with her. He was just wondering what she was looking at, and you can guess either the cats or Chibi Majo. I chose Majo, however, she says she doesn't have that sort of interest and most definitely does not want to take Majo back home with her. She gets pissed at Akuji and leaves. After school, at the entrance, Renge has been waiting for Akuji and invites him to go to a coffee shop with him. Turns out it's a maid cafe and we're served by none other than Mido Aya Meido. Renge seems to appreciate the place for her outfit's quality as a fellow cosplayer, and the shop itself is cute too, which seems to be the reasons Ayame work here, although she herself denies it. She has no choice but to serve them since they're clients, but she does want the both of them out. Ayame gives them the shop's stamp card for repeated clients, but she does not want them to return ever. Akuji wants a celebratory picture, but she refuses. At last, they leave the store and with that, she sends them off with a lovely smile on her face. They gathered enough information about Ayame to understand her a little bit better. She likes cute things, but doesn't like showing it. The only mystery left is regarding who Ayame was talking to on the rooftop. She's still hiding something. Maria has a devious plan of using Ayame's tendency to secrecy to create a situation where Ayame has to try to abstain from her cute things, only leaving her with whatever she's hiding. On another day, there's an event where Akuji finds Kiara, who's on the temple, to look into Ayame, who she finds interesting. Ayame finds them and protects her from Akuji. Kiara uses the situation to perform her own personal witch trial on Ayame and leaves. Ayame apologizes to Akuji because she thought he was going to kidnap her. A big leap in logic, but Ayame always feels something around Akuji. An evil presence. She thinks he might be possessed by a lustful sort of spirit or evil existence, and she offers to perform a purification. It works. Lulu dies. For a little bit. But comes back, and with this, they get proof that Ayame can use some sort of supernatural power. Now that they have enough evidence to confront Ayame, let me talk about some cool side stories of this chapter. A story where Kiara is not interested in anything in the food court, turns out she eats mainly tomatoes. A story where the store owner is looking for things she can rip off people with. A story where Akuji and Majo are shopping and Lulu is dubbing Akuji's lines. Even more wholesome Eve Sensei stories where they play reversi, and one where they eat Zaru Somen. A story where Maria makes Akuji drink a nutritional drink. It was secretly a love potion that failed. A story where Lulu finds an alarm button and leads to her repeating the Japanese word for alarm a few times and realizing something. Of course, we have some Renge shorts where she talks about more retro games and what am I even supposed to be looking at here? It's like a parody mascot for a game console called ZMX. I'm not sure what it is. The highlights of these chapter side stories is being able to return to the maid cafe when Ayame is working there. The first one is when Akuji takes Chibi Majo there and Ayame is surprised to see her, so she forgives Akuji for coming this time because cute is justice. The second one, he doesn't bring Majo, so Ayame is mad, but his stamp card was filled, so that allows him to play a game with a maid. If he wins, he can take a picture of him. The game is a reverse version of Pop-Up Pirate, where you win by popping the panda. You can also use the opportunity to mess with Ayame, staring at her or having just a small preemptive witch trial. I won first try, but it seems that if you lose, you can try again the next day. And with this, you get a picture of an unwilling Ayameito, who just asks you to not show it around to not cause any misunderstandings. Well, back to the main story, the group confronts Ayame regarding being a witch, using the evidence gathered to show how suspicious she actually is, but mainly that she likes cute things. Ayame still claims that it's not enough proof, and according to plan, Akuji just says, okay, I'll find conclusive proof, bye, and they pretend to leave, hiding behind some trees to observe Ayame. Ayame, troubled that they found so much about her, decides to act even more carefully. Before that, however, just one last time, she looks around to see if there's anyone near and summon a sort of round creature.
この丸さ、滑らかさ、本当にお前はなんと可愛いやつなのだろう。
Having been seen on the spot, it's over. She has no other choice but to beat them all up until they forget everything.
今までの鬱憤、晴らさせてもらう。覚悟しろ。
Ayame has 2 attacks and always stay on the back. She sends amulets that if you don't cut down in time, it paralyzes you and you have to mash. However, it barely does any damage, if any. Her only real way of damaging you is through her summon, who releases fireballs, either 3 of them or a lot of them. You can stop that by hitting her with range attacks, but the best way of dealing with it is using Renge's barrier, called Psycho Reflector, that stays out as long as you hold the stylus on the screen. After it absorbs enough magic attacks, it releases an attack called Psycho Ball. Honestly, this fight's not that hard.
煮るなり焼くなり、好きにするがいい。
Ayame still denies being a witch. It wasn't magic power, it was Miko powers. Whatever it might be, Lulu still wants the witch trial to be performed, especially after Ayame said that she doesn't find her cute at all. Alright, so this is how the loathing stage looks like. My goodness! On her initial stage, you can do the classic chest jiggle and blow on skirt to see her legs. Her neck and collarbone brings pretty good reactions too. On her first good stage, you can also get some jiggle action. On her second... wow! On her second stage, you can get some modest jiggle due to her holding her chest down. And if you rub her shoulder a few times, her robe slips even more. Video games are fun. The binoculars also focuses on this region as well. And this is what happened when you fail the witch trial.
うせろ。その煩悩もろとも消し去ってくれる。
I just really like the idea of Akuji flaunting Ayamedo's picture and taunting her with it. You know, I've seen people surprised that this game was by SNK, but from what I read, this was always meant to be a smaller project for the company. The producer Matsushita Yoshiyasu himself acknowledged the company to be mainly a fighting game one, and this project was simply a supporting pillar as a means to experiment. It is a similar story to the first game he designed, Twinkle Star Sprites, in his time for ADK, later bought by SNK Playmore, when they were looking to make a game that was not a fighting game. And he also brought up the idea of Athena Full Throttle for Foma 90X mobile phones, a continuation to the 1986 Athena. And all these games also share the same artist, Fujinomiya Mimori, who has also drawn another SNK non-fighting game produced by Matsushita Yoshiyasu, Kimi no Yusha, for the Nintendo DS. This partnership is interesting because I 100% believe we're the same person. You don't trick me! And this is interesting because apparently he was a big fan of Athena, the first generation one, since his days in middle school. And later, he went on to officially draw her for SNK, for he was the one who drew SNK 40th Anniversary Collection covers. Well, back to the game, Ayame's witch crest is on her shoulder.
やめろ。そんなところまで見てはダメだ。
So the contract is formed. Ayame worries that she's being caught, but Lulu explains her job is only to record the existence of the witches for the angel world. Although Ayame does think it's weird because this sort of witch hunt hasn't been happening in recent times. Ayame immigrated from the witch world for the sake of living a quiet life with her parents, and they all had their memories and powers sealed. However, due to living without any sort of connections, she unconsciously summoned a familiar and recovered her memories. Her powers really were Miko powers, which she developed through practice and turned her familiar into a Shikigami. Since witches are seen negatively in this world, she thought being a Miko wouldn't be a problem. And so, the Miko maid witch student Ayame joins the group and the witch hunt as Akuji's servant. While opening up a little bit, although she still doesn't want to talk about her interests, and Akuji gets his retribution for waving her maid picture around. End of chapter. Regarding Ayame's sweet communication, the way to obtain it is from a side event in the next chapter where she goes to a game center to play a crane game but keeps failing. If you choose the option to get it for her, she thanks you by inviting Akuji to her house. Wow, what a room. Apparently every plushie has a name. One of the things unique to Ayame's sweet communication is that you can ask her to put on costumes. You gotta ask twice though, because she doesn't do it the first time. And as you keep doing the sweet communication, you start cracking a little bit of that hard shell. Eventually there's one segment where Akuji catches her talking to her plushies, and Akuji jokes that if she doesn't want him to spread the word, she has to become his maid. And she accepts. She puts on the maid costume and gives you a knee pillow while cleaning your ears, and later on, if you ask her to serve you, she reacts positively. She even calls you Gosujin-sama. And of course, in the end...
君そんなに見ないでくれ。恥ずかしいじゃないか。でも、私は今、すごく幸せだ。
Well, enjoy your fourth marriage, Akuji! Off to chapter 5. Lulu appears with information from the Angel World, a paper that says there's a witch, and in fine print, search for an unidentified witch. Well, that doesn't really help, but Maria seemed to have an idea. She brings a magazine with news about an Yuma, which stands for Unidentified Mysterious Animal, a cryptid. The Yuma is seen across moonlit nights, and she thinks it might lead to them discovering a witch. Akuji doesn't really go along her occult mania, and Ayame doesn't seem to know about any Yumas that are related to witches, so in the end, Maria gets mad and leaves. When Maho and Renge come to hear about the new info, Maria is still in a bad mood. They don't have any leads, so Akuji decides he might as well look into Yumas. He goes to the library, where we're introduced to a new character, the librarian.
随分と変わったものを探しているのね。
Who has heard of rumors of the little bit bad Akuji. She gives him a newspaper with an Yuma article. It talks about a human-like shadow jumping from building to building. When sharing his findings and talking about the possibilities of this Yuma being a witch, another student passes through the corridor who leaves an impression, for he is covered in bruises. Maho heard rumors that amongst the first years, the topic of Yumas became popular, alongside the rumors of a cute and soft mysterious transfer student, a few words that catches the attention of Ayame. Later, Maho approaches Maria again, who upon hearing Akuji is looking into Yumas, she gladly comes back to the investigations. At the same time, someone comes running through and bumps into Maho, and then starts bad-mouthing her. Maria scolds her for that, and then she starts crying. Crocodile tears. She then badmouths Maria and goes away. Ayame is looking from afar. She seems very eager to look into this transfer student, for the sake of the investigation. Ayame finds out that the fluffy transfer student is the person who claims to have seen the Yuma, Watabiki Mary, from class 1B. But she doesn't have much more than that, so Akuji decides on hands-on investigation. He approaches some first years who recognizes him as the little bit bad senpai, and he asks about the person who saw the Yuma. They go call Yuma-kun, and after giving Akuji a warning about how to treat him, there he appears.
先輩のことですよね。僕に用がある人っていうのは、一体何のご用でしょうか。
In front of you is the boy we've seen before, Mochizuki Yuma, and due to his name, it seems the first years misunderstood what Akuji was saying, although the glasses girl seemed very happy to see Akuji calling for Yuma. Either way, the boy seems to know about the Yuma rumors, although he hasn't seen it himself. Akuji feels bad for wasting an injured person's time and tells Yuma that if he needs help, he'll listen to him. Yuma thinks Akuji is a kind person, but you know Akuji, he's a little bit bad, he's not of that life. When Akuji is about to leave though, Yuma warns him that he thinks Akuji shouldn't involve himself too much with this unidentified mysterious animal stuff, for it might be a scary monster, and they part ways. A bit of a heart-throbbing conversation, to which Lulu takes a bit of notice, but Akuji just claims seeing someone injured like that makes one want to protect them and nothing more. Later the group finds Mary. Maria warns Akuji that she's a dangerous person, and when he starts a conversation, she responds pissed at him, but then...
キラキラして綺麗です。まるで夢の中の王子様みたい。
Love at first sight. She starts calling him Akuji-sama, saying he looks like a prince, and also makes him call her Mary-tan. She tells him she has seen the Yuma in the business district when the moon was out, and that it had something similar to cat ears on its head. Something Akuji heard for the first time because Mary just said whatever to anyone who approached her, so this is a secret only the two of them shared. Ehehehehe. After school, the group gathers and separates in two groups to search for leads. Akuji stays with Maho and Renge to investigate the business district. Renge is on her Neo Geo Pocket as always, and Maho points at how pretty the full moon is. Renge stops gaming. She can't focus due to something moving in the corner of her eye. Something jumping on top of buildings that has something similar to animal ears on its head. When getting closer, they get a better view of it, and there they see... I think I know who the Yuma is. There are two of them though. They fight each other until one of them falls from a building. They rush to the spot and find Kiara along the way. Akuji asks if she saw some weird creature. Oh, Kiara. She denies anything came through. She also doesn't recognize Chibi Maho and bullies her for looking like her beloved Maho-sama. And then scolds Akuji for having a girl like Maho but putting his hands on other girls, and she's not wrong. That's why she hates men. Akuji asks what she came here to do in the middle of the night, but she doesn't give a proper answer and leaves us. Akuji has been thinking about Kiara's attitude, and because of that, Lulu calls him a Roricon. Not something you see too much in a game in a Nintendo console, is it? Someone being called a Roricon? Maho spots something and excuses herself, and there she comes like a cannon. It's Watabiki Mary with a tackle. Akuji mediates between Mary and Maho and defends Mary from Lulu. She calls him a Roricon again. Goodbye, servant, you criminal. They also end up spotting Yuma, who seems to be more injured than the previous day. When Akuji returns to the place he saw the Yuma, he finds an ID for their school, and unsurprisingly, it's the ID for Mochizuki Yuma, which Akuji will use to coerce Yuma. According to Lulu. On the way back, they spot the same Yuma now fighting two others. Akuji follows them and comes face to face with the unidentified mysterious animal boy. The boy doesn't seem to be well to fight, but it seems he can follow orders, and so begins a little minigame where Akuji helps him fight the other beast. If you win, Animal Boy thanks Akuji and leaves us while smiling, and you obtain some used bandages that fell on the floor. And if you lose, Ayame comes to save you two, and he escapes. The next day, Akuji goes to Yuma's class regarding his ID, but he's doing so bad he collapses, and Akuji takes him to the infirmary. They return later and see the hurt and tired Yuma in bed, who's covered in sweat. Lulu takes a sniff and Akuji thinks he should at least dry him up. And you do, you wipe every last bit of sweat out of him with the stylus. Akuji notices that Yuma, with his bandages removed, look quite similar, and that's when he wakes up. Akuji puts his bandages back, and Yuma thanks him for being such a kind person, although we know Akuji is just a little bit bad. When he's about to give Yuma his ID, Yuma's classmates come in. Glasses Girl starts describing the scene in front of her eyes in detail. She seems quite happy about it. She does look like someone who would be. It's probably the glasses. Akuji runs away from the scene. Later he concludes Yuma is the Yuma. Renge brought a portrait of the Yuma she saw. That's pretty cute. According to Ayame. Well, according to me too, but she brings another drawing and she's good, and with this, it becomes very clear to everyone that the Yuma is Mochizuki Yuma. Pretty cute, according to Ayame. And well, according to me too. Lulu thinks they found their next witch, and all they need is to find direct proof. But before we do that, let me talk about some cool side stories of this chapter. Maria's story where she tries to get Akuji to do his class duties and he teases her by saying a sleeping prince is only awoken by a kiss. Renge and Genta event where they talk about King of Fighters. Renge mains Team Psycho Soldier and even shows off fan art in 80s style. Ayame short where she's reluctant to go inside a coffee shop to get some mascot goods. Akuji brings her inside and she can't eat the cake because it's too cute. Ayame short where Lulu is taking pictures of her and later she asks Akuji what he thinks of her, which gets interrupted by Maria and ends up in a misunderstanding. All this happened because Lulu is threatening to break a premium DVD of the mascot she likes. Short where Mary is sad because she gained weight and Akuji scolds her for only eating candy. Turns out she only has candy in her house, so Akuji teaches her some simple nutritious dishes, mainly curry. Short where they look at the school scores, Maho does well because she's on a scholarship, but Renge is top of the year and she only gets good grades so her mom doesn't prohibit her from playing games. Short where Lulu learns about the chicken species, Kochin, and realizes something. She then tries to make Maho says it 10 times. You can choose to go along with it, but if you do, you also get seen by Maria, who apparently would be willing to say it if Akuji asked her. Well, back to Yuma. They call him to the rooftop and present all the evidence they have that he's the Yuma. He thought the conversation would be something like this. He senses something and leaves for the time being. Akuji trusts him to come back, which he does at night in his transformed form. Akuji asks him his reason for fighting, but he asks everyone to forget about him and to not get involved anymore. The reason why he's showing them this form is because he feels it will be dangerous for them to get involved, but everyone seems fine with it due to being witches, and they could help him. Maria is also there. Yuma doesn't believe in them so easily, so Akuji proposes a match to prove to Yuma witches are powerful, ease Yuma's troubles, and to conclude the witch hunt.
あなたたちの力見せてください。
Yuma has two main ways of attacking you. If he's close, he'll use his claws, and if he's afar, he'll launch projectiles which you can send back by slicing them. Sometimes he will start Naruto running across the screen and you can hit him from it, but it's better to just wait him to stop moving. You can do this fight with just Lulu very easily. If he's close, you slice him and he can't attack. If he's afar, you send his attacks back and you pretty much receive no damage. Having unlocked Ayame though, you can have some fun with her as her main attack is sending a fireball when you tap the screen. So you can pretty much just nuke Yuma. Her other skill is setting up a barrier, but it's not very good in this fight. It also doesn't return attacks like Renge's. And so you successfully beat up an injured kid.
さすがです。僕の負けですね。
Yuma acknowledges their strength. The reason why he's constantly injured and fights with these monsters is due to his family being given the mission to protect the people of this town for generations. And the number of these monsters has increased lately. But enough about that, Lulu wants a witch trial. Akuji says there's no need for this since Yuma already feels like joining the group, but Yuma doesn't seem to mind because he trusts Akuji, unbeknown of what the witch trial entails. Oh my heart. Yuma is clearly not a witch though, so there really is no need for a witch trial, but Lulu is adamant to proceed with it because she has a quota to fill. The player is given the choice to perform the witch trial or to skip it altogether and keep the pure Yuma untouched. I'm guessing they thought some players wouldn't be too much into the idea of doing a witch trial on a boy. Personally, there's absolutely no way I'm going to skip it. Now Yuma is very receptive to the witch trial. There really is one place that gets a negative reaction from him, besides checking the same place several times. On his loathing stage, what you can do is, you touch his ass and then rub it 3 times and that makes you lower his pants a little bit. You can also make it jiggle by just rubbing on it. And this is what happens when you fail the witch trial.
やめてください。そんな人だったなんて思ってませんでした。
On his initial stage, if you rub his belly a few times, you raise his shirt. Nothing really custom you can do on his first good stage. On the last stage, however, look at that, his tail came out. Nice. If you blow on his ears a few times, they twitch. And if you rub the lowest button of his pajamas a few times, you unbutton it. The binoculars as well focus on his belly. By the way, he uses his pajamas under his uniform because he goes into the infirmary so much. Now, going on a little bit of a tangent, while I don't think Doki Doki Majo Shinpan invented such genre of games, at the very least I think it had some impact on the DS, where people went, oh, I guess we can do that, huh? So what are some other DS games that have unwholesome touch mechanics? Well, funny enough, in Shin Lucky Star Moe Drill Tabidachi, there is a minigame that's a direct parody of Doki Doki Majo Shinpan called Raki Raki Miko Saidan, where you can touch or look on the lower screen, and on the top screen there's a bunch of people giving suggestions on what you should do. Unsurprisingly, you have a Toraburu game with touching mechanics. In Sora no Toshimono, Dreamy Season, you also have a minigame that's pretty much the same as Doki Doki Majo Shinpan, up to the point when you're done, where eyes flicker and you have some sort of sign you have to press. There's a game called Hachikoi that the DS version has been cancelled, although it went on to have an Android version. It is fairly known because of the character Kasugaoka Kurumi becoming popular, and this game would make good use of the touchscreen for its events. Of course, because we have something for everyone, for those who don't like Doki Doki Majo Shinpan, they might enjoy Duo Love, where you're a female transfer student who discovers there's a nocturnal fight club in the school, and you can support your chosen boy by giving them massages, wiping their sweat and things like that. I think the use of the middle space of the Nintendo DS for censorship to be ingenious. This game is actually well known because of what's called Heaven State, which became a meme. Lastly, there is a game called Kimokawa E. I'm not sure what this game is about, but I feel like I'm 100% making a video about this someday. Well, okay, back to Yuma. His crest is on the side of his stomach.
これで僕が魔女じゃないって分かってくれましたよね。
Akuji and Yuma share some apologies, but Yuma is glad Akuji is his first person to see his crest. And with this, the contract is formed, and so Yuma joins the group as Akuji's servant. And just like Yuma will help the group on the witch hunt, they will help him deal with the monsters. Ayame in particular seems to be raring to go. Now, of course, Yuma also has a Sweets communication, which is actually unlocked a few chapters later on an event where Yuma invites Akuji to his house for study sessions. Oh, Japanese style! You can ask for his free sizes. Of course, he doesn't know that, so Akuji measures it on the spot. You can open his trousers, you can strip him to take care of his wounds, just the boys being boys. There's a line you can say that's just banana. You can also ask him to transform for you. Anyways, eventually Akuji has an important talk with Yuma. He sees him more than just a friend or companion. Yuma shares the sentiment, and so you get the gay marriage ending.
西村さん、本当に僕でいいんでしょうか？嬉しいです。
Of course Yuma is in a dress. Well, off to the next chapter. Eve Sensei calls Akuji for some exams. Lulu goes along as well because it's Lulu. But she just cannot find her pen that has the perfect size and hardness and it's a perfect fit for Sensei. Now, where is her pen? Can you see the pen? You can take your time looking for it, perform a little bit of a witch trial, and if you take it too far, apparently she loses her cool and things happen that are not very clear to the player, although to Akuji, it felt like he was daydreaming for a little bit. Oh, there's the pen! Yeah, classic Eve Sensei scene. I don't dislike it, neither does Lulu. Akuji heads to the food court with Mary, who he met along the way. Look her eating kitsune udon in that costume. Yuma appears and sits on the table. He was eating with some girls of his class, but came when he saw Akuji, important person and all that, and he even offers to feed Akuji. The situation was getting a little bit too dangerous for him, so he flees. After class, Majo was looking for Akuji to return home with. She was supposed to go to a farewell party for the baseball club, but she doesn't care about that anymore. She just wants to be with Akuji. Forever and ever. Akuji is taken aback a little bit, and Maria gets mad at this Rorikon. Majo is also not carrying her bag and doesn't bother getting it because she only cares about Akuji. She wants Akuji to look at only her, to cherish only her. Otherwise...
私、何をするかわからない。
Just go back home. The next day, before Akuji leaves for school, Ayame appears inside the house. She broke in because she wants to go to school with him and starts asking what about her is not good enough. He assures there's nothing wrong with her, and now she's happy. She wants to go to school, but first she wants to introduce him to her parents. He runs away, although she finds him in school later and wants to eat together, calling themselves lovers. There's clearly something wrong happening, but if it gets to the point a girl offers you a lap pillow, it's like the other options don't exist. In class, Maria asks what's up. Akuji seems to be happy that she seems normal compared to the others. Oh hi Renge. Renge drags Akuji to play games with him. Games for her are the ultimate expression of love. She's also a little bit weird. Also, if you go to Akuji's house to skip a time period, wow, he has a character sprite, huh? The moment Akuji lies on the sofa, he feels something weird under him. It's Yuma, who offers to give Akuji a massage. Akuji flees to the rooftop where Lulu is. She convinces him to open up when she mentions the goods he has hidden under his bed. Lulu thinks it's weird Akuji is being this popular and doesn't go along his exaggerations. She's busy watching over the girls in the field and tells him the boy filled with hormones should just go consult with the pheromone female nurse. Eve Sensei ascertains there's nothing wrong with Akuji and it's the others who are being weird. There might even be something making them act like that, although she was just talking to herself. When Akuji asks her for suggestions on how to bring them back to normal, she tells him he should make them remember there's more important things besides just him. She thinks she should be of more help, but she's busy herself, so Akuji goes to the library to check books in psychology. The librarian comes to scold him for making too much noise. My goodness, that's a short skirt. He tells her he's been searching for a way to cure a sick heart, and she finds some reading for him. Akuji thanks her and promptly leaves. After class, he takes Maria to a coffee shop and they discuss how everyone is being weird. She as well seemed to have been pressured by the others, and you can actually see that in side stories. A Renge side story where she drags Akuji to play the only Gyaruge for the Neo Geo Pocket Love. Just as things were getting a bit too dangerous, Maria appears interrupting them, and Renge is not happy with that, and in her own way starts threatening Maria. Another side story where Akuji is helping Maria clean the science room, and oh my god, there she is. Majo comes to the conclusion that Akuji was forced by Maria to help him, hits him into silence when he tries to say anything, and warns the human who can't use magic to not drag Akuji into these boring experiments, but she still has a little bit of her kind side. So when she sees that the homewrecker's hands are dirty, she tries to clean them with a liquid that shares similar atoms with normal table salt. Although this one seems to be an acid. Because of what Eve Sensei said, Maria thinks this might be the work of a new witch, due to everyone being affected being a witch, and a wolf boy, who formed a contract with Akuji. Maria being a special kind of witch in the sense that she's not one, so she remained unaffected. Akuji takes Lulu to the front of the storehouse because someone NTR'd Majo from him or something, she wasn't paying attention. He mentions the possibility of a witch controlling the others, so she's willing to help. Maria brings Majo and they question her. What's her precious thing? Akuji. She forgot about the cats and the cheerleading. Well, if talking won't work, we'll need something physical, and so Maria looks for it, while Akuji will deal with the others. While Lulu is wondering how big this new witch's chest is, Akuji thinks that he will like someone's help. Mary comes tackling him and she notices he's a bit down. Besides being physically down because she tackled him. She offers to help him and Akuji accepts as long as it doesn't end up getting her mixed up with witches. You can follow any order you want, but I started with Renge. Akuji, Lulu, and Mary go to the game center where Renge was waiting for Akuji because she hid games under his pillow every night so he would end up liking games. And then she asks the games to be returned. Yeah, she's just like that. She claims that she doesn't have interest in games, just that she's focused on them, because the first time she met Akuji they played together. She was getting a little bit too hyper, so Mary drags her into a corner and calms her down. Renge is not the type of girl where talking works, so to make her remember she's a pure gamer, Akuji accepts to take her on a gaming duel. Renge is having fun, seeing Akuji's gaming ability to have grown considerably, but she wasn't playing with Akuji, surprised. Renge's opponent was Mary all along. Renge realizes it's fun to play games even if it's not with Akuji. Rather, Akuji sucks, so it's more fun to play with someone better than him. She starts remembering that games are to her an existence much more important than Akuji, and that's when Eve-sensei appears. She does something to Renge's forehead and claims that, with this, she went back to how she originally was. Eve-sensei being here is clearly unnatural, but at the very least, all she wants to do for now is to help Akuji. So with this, Oda Renge has returned to normal. Next is Ayame, who has been waiting for Akuji in a maid uniform, not for work or interest, but simply for the sake of Akuji, though she notices Mary behind him and that catches her attention a little bit. Akuji asks her to change. Lulu suggests naked apron, but it's between a school uniform or the Miko uniform. I chose the school uniform, but it took a while to make the pick and I regret it a little bit, not like it matters anyways. After she changes, she feels there's something missing. Akuji tells her to touch Mary. She feels Mary is cute. Ayame touches Akuji, doesn't feel cute. The angel over there doesn't feel cute. That's when Eve-sensei appears and does something to Ayame's left shoulder. Eve-sensei also does something to a scratch Akuji has on his hand and it gets cured, leaving before Akuji can ask further questions. Mary is suffering in the hands of Ayame, but it's all for the sake of Ayame's rehabilitation, according to Ayame, and she endures it for the sake of Akuji, and so middle Ayame has returned to normal. Next is Yuma, who was waiting in the parking lot where they first met. He wants to thank Akuji for helping him before, just a little bit of male friend skinship, although he wouldn't mind if Akuji did more. Lulu thinks she might be interrupting something important, but then Eve-sensei comes to his help. Yuma believes Akuji to be a good-natured, trustable person from how people treat him, but that just means he believes the people around him rather than just Akuji, and they make him remember he wants to help everyone. She uses the opportunity to do what she did on the other two. Eve-sensei once again leaves before Akuji could ask anything, and so Mochizuki Yuma has returned to normal. Only one person left. Lulu is running out of patience because she's only being fed rice, miso and bonito flakes, while Akuji is being fed all his favorite stuff, while Maho does the thing. Maho ascertains that the only thing that matters is Akuji, and he's the only reason she came to the human world. Maria breaks into the house bringing Maho's mother picture. Maho remembers her mother and the cat she's been taking care of, and once again, Eve-sensei appears, suspending the contract made on Maho's witch crest. Seems that it's what she's been doing to the others as well. Before any questions can be asked, she leaves, although this time she just disappears out of a sudden. Teleportation magic, according to Lulu, who's surprised there will be a witch almost as powerful as her around, although Lulu can't use teleportation magic. Lulu demands Akuji to seize Eve-sensei, but for now, it's better to think of a plan, and Akuji takes Maria home. Something they haven't done in a while. Akuji thanks her for the help, and so Akai Maho has returned to normal. With everyone gathered on the rooftop, Akuji discusses Eve-sensei's powers, and Lulu even took a picture of her curing Akuji's hand. They don't seem to get why she would reveal to them she's a witch just to help Akuji, but Lulu doesn't care, she has a quota to fill, and motivations beyond that. And so, they decide to confront Eve-sensei. Now before we get to that, here's some side stories that happened on this chapter. Akuji catches the librarian on the game center and she tries to pretend she was just looking for delinquents. Mary asks you if you like big or small. If you choose big, you can see her in the cafeteria eating tofu, natto and milk while crying. Akuji later comforts her. The elementary schooler we saw in the chapter 1 asks Akuji if he knows about Doki Rajo, a parody of Doki Majo, and tells him it would be good for him to complete the game finding at least 25 reverse pandas. Her name is Yaga Mike, and she knows everything about this road and will tell more next time they meet. Lulu takes a piss in a bush, and Shino comes harvest some mushrooms. In the end, Akuji sees her without underpants, so she calls him Meirorikon again. Renge is reading a book, but of course she's not studying. She's doing a hardcore retro game quiz, and she wants Akuji to try as well. Of course, I cheated. I don't know any of this. What is a raster scroll? Bank switching? Programmable sound generator? FM synthesis? John Chowning? Ralph Baer? I feel like there's going to be someone listening to these going, wow, yeah, of course. She gets really happy Akuji gets all answers right. Oh no, please don't look at me like that. I had a list, I cheated. Lulu's story where she's been taking Akuji's phone and using it to write a short story, but it's actually a diary. She didn't want to go to the human world, but couldn't defy the Archangel. Didn't think the place was that bad due to there being plenty of beer and edamame. Thinks Akuji is good looking, and even if he has a bad mouth, she thinks he's kind, so she kinda fell for him. Sometimes, when he's asleep, she goes sleep next to him. It's written a bit weird, so Akuji doesn't really understand much, or whether if it's an original story or about someone Lulu knows. She finds him reading it and panics, but becomes relieved when she sees he doesn't get it. Yuma's side story where he asks Akuji about the witch trial. Akuji says it was something he had to do. Yuma understands, Akuji did it unwillingly. Well, I had an option. Lulu says she enjoyed every bit of it. While doing it, Akuji touched his tail, and in his hometown, a loved one touching one's tail is a confession ritual amongst wolf people. To him, Akuji is a precious friend. So he doesn't really know what to do and wants Akuji to help him understand. Meanwhile, Lulu is going insane over there. Akuji and Yuma postpone this for now, but this scene is actually quite important. You cannot see this scene if you skip the witch trial, and seeing this scene is necessary to get Yuma's happy ending. Another Yuma short where he buys ice cream and shares with Akuji. Wow, that is too good of an option to not pick. Another where Akuji hears Yuma talking about something and hears his name. Another male student passed by, and Yuma reveals he received a love letter from a senior because he thought he was gay from seeing Yuma and Akuji's relationship. Well, they're just good friends, so they just leave it at that. Back to Eve Sensei. The group called Eve Sensei to the rooftop. She gets there late because there was a student resting in the infirmary. Renge also gets there about the same time because she spent all night playing games and was resting in the infirmary. Eve Sensei starts explaining what happened. The owner of a strong source of power put a spell that affected the witches, disturbing their hearts. However, the spell was placed on one single being, an angel. The contracts with the witches are essentially using Akuji as a middleman to send witch power and information to the heaven world. So the witches are connected to Akuji, who is magically connected to this angel that's receiving these powers and informations. Not even Lulu knew about all this. Lulu also seemed to think the name Eve sounds familiar, but who cares, we gotta prove that she's a witch. So Akuji grabs his long and hard weapon, and so the Eve Sensei fight begins.
準備はできてるわ。全力で切ってね。
So Eve Sensei attacks in two forms. She launches these magic spheres that moves in an arc. You can't block them with bombs because of that, but you can easily send them back with any sort of slicing attack. Yuma has a slicing attack similar to Lulu's Angel Blade, however, it has no reload, so you can spam it, although for less damage. He also has an attack where you charge and slide to send a shockwave, but honestly it isn't very good. Her other attack is a light pillar that causes considerable amount of damage. You can hit her to stop her from doing it, or you can block it with Renge or Ayame's barrier. She also has a stronger version of the attack, just don't let her do it. She moves quite slowly, so it's not too hard to hit her with projectiles, but she's the first enemy that has a double HP bar. Anyways, the group eventually wins.
ダメ先生もう戦えないわ
Lulu starts freaking out from seeing Eve-sensei's powers, but she asks Lulu to not say anything more. She acknowledges her loss, although it doesn't feel like a victory to the group, and she's very eager to receive the witch trial, even asking Lulu to tell Akuji to do it, and so the witch trial begins. Right, what can we do here? Well, there's an obvious point of interest. One thing about Eve-sensei is that she's the first one that doesn't mind getting her chest touched, but if you touch her stomach, she gets mad. In her loathing stage, touching her chest a few times gets you to remember video games are fun, and the binoculars also focus on her chest. In her initial stage, you can get another bounce by touching both sides in succession. In her first good stage, if you touch the garter belt a few times, it comes out. In her second good stage, kind of a weird pose to be honest, touch her chest once and you pull the string up, my goodness. Kinda makes you want to keep doing it, and if you do, whoops, you undo the strings. And this is what happened when you fail the witch trial.
もうこんなことしちゃダメ。これ以上はお預けよ。
Going on a little bit of a tangent, Doki Doki Majo Shinpan got the rating of 015, meaning for people 15 years or plus. However, its sequel, Doki Doki Majo Shinpan 2 and Doki Majo Plus got a 017 rating, 17 years or plus, and were 2 of the 16 games that ever got such rating on the DS. I think at this point you could see why. The producer, however, Matsushita Yoshiyasu, thought it would be worth to have an age restriction if it meant having an interesting game, and seemed to want older people to enjoy it. He wanted to get the uncles to remember the time where they would read slightly ecchi manga and feel excited by it. He also wanted people to feel a bit embarrassed to buy it. It would make for good memories. On the booklet of the game, you can even see Lulu saying, "Be aware of your surroundings when you play this, boss." And even on the game website, they parodied the warning of an adult website, but instead of asking if the visitor is of age, they would ask if they were a bad human or not, due to the unwholesome contents of the website. Back to Eve-sensei, a crest is found on her left chest.
西村くん、あなたって本当にすごい子。先生の期待に応えてくれるなんて。
After all is done, Eve-sensei is all wet from the sweat that came from the fight and the witch trial. Akuji criticizes her once again for always speaking like this, but Lulu gets mad at him, revealing that Eve-sensei is an archangel. Apparently, Lulu didn't recognize her because she didn't remember her face for reasons. Eve-sensei did this roundabout way of helping them and fought them because she wanted to test them. However, on what exactly is not clear yet. This incident too was born because everyone cherished Akuji. Everyone is like, no, it's not like that. No, it's not like that. Besides Renge, who's being the usual, and Maho, who at all times support Akuji with a smile on her face. Eve-sensei seemed to be looking forward to who will win the Akuji Bowl, and with this, the end of this chapter. So you can actually unlock Eve-sensei's Sweets communication back on chapter 3, where she's troubled that the previous night a bunch of white stuff came out and invites Akuji to her house to have some of the remains. And if you accept, you go to her house to eat some white curry. She responds well to almost everything you do, but honestly, the only thing of notice that I wrote down on my notes is if you ask her to motorboat you, she refuses. If you ask her again, she does it. And in the end, you two get married.
これからはイブって呼んで。ね。あくじ。
Next chapter starts with the group questioning Eve-sensei, and she uses the opportunity to ask them to find the archangel that requested Akuji to look for the witches. She's also in the school and might be affected by the previous magic. Lulu fearing it might be the so-called hysteric archangel that's even stronger than Eve-sensei. So the objective now is to find this archangel and then deal with the witch that would have the power to control such an archangel. Also, it seems that the magic didn't affect Akuji so much because it's strengthened one's thought towards another, but Akuji is in a sort of harem situation, so it kinda spreads out. Even Eve Sensei enticed him to make her be seen as a heroine to level out even more his heart and leading to more self-control of his part. In a way, Eve Sensei was helping Akuji, but she wasn't the only one to do it. Anyways, pool scene. Yep, nice volume. Yep, nice collarbone. Yep, paradise. Yep, eating into it. Thanks, Lulu. Oh look, Maria took her glasses off. Nice. Slender, nice body, yep, thanks. Okay, I'm done with this. We're having a joint class with the second years, Maho got a crowd surrounding her, and Renge is playing around pretending she's her adored Princess Athena. She was making too much of a ruckus, so Ayame kindly stops her. And here's Maho in a swimsuit. You can really see from what class she comes from. They rescue the drowning Renge, who can't swim, and that's the whole scene. Returning to his class, Akuji meets Yuma. He was a bit jealous about the pool. He doesn't really go because his cars stand out. That aside, he found someone suspicious. Watabiki Mary. She was too calm for someone who saw paranormal phenomenons and didn't try to look into or tell others about seeing an Yuma herself. So magic might be something she's used to. She might be a witch, or even the archangel we're looking for, so Akuji will investigate her and Yuma will keep looking for information. Akuji wants to give Yuma a breather for being too much of a hard worker. He tells the group he wants to go to the pool with everyone and Yuma after class, also that Mary seems suspicious, so they want to have Eve Sensei confirm it. Akuji will call Mary, Maria will call Eve Sensei, and Ayame is entrusted with getting swimming clothes for Yuma since he likely doesn't have them. When Akuji invites Mary, Lulu takes a picture of her. Akuji then goes invite Yuma. There's rumors going around about the both of them, but that's besides the point. Akuji explains the situation and Ayame appears with his swimming clothes. Yuma is happy to accept after all this is done for him, and Ayame too is quite excited about it in her own way. At the pool, everyone is waiting for Yuma, but he seems reluctant to come out, so Lulu drags him out. Wow. Ayame. Good job, Ayame. Ayame doesn't deny this is within her interests, but this happened because she requested a swimsuit oriented towards boys. In a way, it's not wrong. Anyways, it fits him, so no one have a problem with it. Mary is also there, and Lulu is quite excited to check what sort of witch she is under the costume, however she is swimming with the costume. Eve Sensei comes and confirms that Mary isn't the archangel that she's looking for. That archangel can transform, but not to something so different like how Mary looks like. Akuji then introduces Mary to the group, but when she sees Ayame, she runs away because of the trauma caused to her on the last chapter. Akuji searches for her to calm her down with some towels as well to dry her out, but he doesn't find her, not even the wet trail her costume should be leaving behind. At that time, a voluptuous girl who we definitely have not seen before appears and introduces herself as Kanan, Kiara's older sister. Akuji asks if she saw a girl in a costume like a giant wet slug, and she freezes when hearing about a giant slug. Akuji takes her hand to soothe her in a way that can only be called raising yet another flag. Lulu interrupts him climbing the steps to adulthood because she spotted Mary, and so they part ways. He gets tired from running and loses track of her, but Lulu takes an evidence picture of Akuji's incompetence she can use as an excuse for the angel world whenever the witch hunt is not progressing. She also took a picture of Mary and they leave it at that. The next day, the group gathers and they're surprised Mary managed to escape Akuji's pursuit. Maho thinks she might be a witch. Ayame defends Mary as she might be surprisingly amiable from the time she spent with her on the last chapter. Renge mentioned how she kept her company for days in gaming competitions as well. She also helped Akuji with Yuma too. It was too much stuff for one single person to do, so Maria surmises there are at least 2 or more Watabiki Marys. On the picture Lulu took, there's not a wet trail on her costume when she should be soaking wet. On the other one, where Mary is splashing broth all around, there has no stains on her costume. Eve-sensei agrees the Archangel should be a priority, but Mary too could have been affected by some sort of magic, so for now, protecting her comes first. And so begins the Mary witch hunt, starting with looking into her suspicious costume. Akuji goes to school with Mary the next day and gives her some candy. She wants to repay him and he asks her for some of her costume, but when he brings it to Maria and Maho, it had disappeared. They look for Lulu, who was in the girls' changing room, yeah, Paradise, classic Lulu. After hearing about the costume, she gives them a bottle where you can store magic inside. A fairy, a bee, milk. Akuji asks Mary again for some of her costume, and Mary wonders what he's using it for. When she hears he's going to investigate it, she runs away. So he got the evidence, but he thinks he's being avoided. But Maho ascertains Akuji is not the kind of person to be disliked without him noticing, rather the contrary. But Akuji doesn't think he's liked like that due to being a little bit bad. At about that time, Kanan comes to the classroom and snuggles up to him. Maho panics and excuses herself. Kanan talks about someone being a mismatch to him, so that's why this would be the most appropriate form. Akuji doesn't really get it, but for now he goes after Maho. She doesn't get why she ran away. Akuji explains it was all a misunderstanding, and when asked why he knew she would be there, you can pick the option between it being because of the cats or because it's a place that lives in their memories, since so many of them happened here. The real reason is because of a flowering quince tree, which was Maho mother's favorite, and when she comes here she feels better. Maho have trusted Akuji to come here. Wow, this is a really good mood. Too bad Mary was listening this whole time. Akuji also lets it slip that they live together and poor little Mary gets her heart broken. They go after her, but they get separated and he loses Mary himself along the way. The next day, Maho apologizes for losing Mary, however, she went the exact opposite direction from Akuji. And for both of them, Mary disappeared along the way. They take this as proof of Mary's magic, and the only thing left is to confront her about it. Now before we get to that, here's some of these chapters' side stories. Akuji goes to the temple and sees people's wishes. One little sister wants her older brother to stop being a NEET. How nice. Akuji and Maho find Mike praying for her manga to sell better. She asks them if they know about Saki Ika by the mangaka Mochi Kagami, and they do. She then asks if they know about her manga Toki Rajo. They don't. She also talks about a temple that appeared in Saki Ika that became a sort of holy land where good-natured fans would visit. She also gives hints to an upcoming fight, hints that I most definitely remember when I was doing it. One short where due to sudden rain, Akuji goes to Maho's house for cover, and when the roof starts leaking, he starts fixing the place. Maho comes worried about leakage and finds him taking care of him and is happy to see Akuji protecting her house, and they head back home together. Mary event where she's doing Love Me Not on 8 petal flowers. You have the option to take off one so she gets a Love Me. Renge does a JoJo reference. Wow, that is a very noticeable reverse panda. I am a short where she asks Akuji to pretend to be her boyfriend for a couple's lottery giving goods of the mascot she likes. Librarian short where she seems to be worried about something, turns out to be her weight, and Akuji ends up giving her some candy. Renge event where she talks about the Hyper Neo Geo 64. Not that I'm really sure what it is. Kanang event where she drags Akuji to the shopping district to show her around. He tells her Kiara should look out for deficiencies from only eating tomatoes, and she says it's none of his business. But is still thankful for him. He buys her dried tomatoes so she could try to make Kiara eat more varied types of foods, and as thanks, Kanang gives him a tomato. She bites it to prove it's not poison, and they share an indirect kiss. Maria event where she gives Akuji some tea. This one was a failure as well, it seems. Yuma event where he's practicing the recorder. Akuji helps him and they keep using the same recorder back and forth. Yuma short where he made fruit curry in class and Yuma used those small bananas. Akuji asks if he likes small bananas, but he likes them bigger but not too big, and Akuji thinks Yuma's bananas is a nice secret ingredient, and that's the scene, my goodness. Kiara short where she's looking for something. Akuji helps, despite forgetting to ask what it is. He finds a can of fish, and that was what she was looking for because it was the first thing she ever received from Majo, and then she leaves us. But she comes back to give an unwilling yet proper thanks. There's one where the school is holding a school-wide Miss contest, and you can vote on one of the 12 girls it lists. Eve Sensei always comes on top and Majo gets second, but the girl or boy you choose gets their level of favorability greatly increased, which helps for getting their endings. You can actually see who's on the lead of the Akuji Bowl in the school shop. There's a doll inside the casket called Machina who tells you the name of your fated person. I was just trying to please everyone or choosing the most entertaining option, so Kiara being the lead surprised me a little bit. Might not feel like I did too many events with her, but I am skipping mentioning a lot of them. Back to Mary. We're waiting for her. Akuji complains about Eve Sensei being late and Lulu beats him up for that. It's fun to see Lulu being respectful to someone after the whole game being a slob, that sycophant. Mary appears and notices she's being ambushed and runs back into the school. The group runs around all over finding fakes until one is left and cornered on the rooftop. She thinks we're going to catch and then sell her to a foreign country. Her fears comes from her mom telling stories about how there are people in black suits who look for witches, and when they find out you're one, they take you away. Which is why she started avoiding Akuji when she learned he was investigating her. Doesn't help Akuji dresses like that due to wanting to look like he's a little bit bad. They explain that they want to make it clear if she's a witch so they can protect her from whatever happened, even those supposed kidnapping black suits. And for some reason she takes that as a marriage proposal, oh Mary. And while everything should end up here, Eve Sensei says it's a little bit too fast. Finishing it so soon is not good, they should endure just a little longer. Akuji should get familiar with her magic and find her witch crest. Lulu is not too excited about this one, but that means we're getting that witch trial. Akuji tells Mary to strip, quite a choice of words. Mary gets nervous about it and goes into self-defense mode. So as drastic measures, as well as proving Akuji is strong enough to protect her, we're getting the Mary fight. So Mary can summon copies that you can just leave there, but she can also summon meteors. I didn't expect that. They're really slow though, so you should be able to deal with them. The copies blow up if they're hit once, either by you or a meteor, and soon explode, but if you hit them again, they don't detonate. Aha, look at her hopping around. Once in a while, she also removes her costume, revealing that she's wearing a Gofurori costume underneath it. She uses the magic to summon a huge purple energy rabbit that I honestly didn't know how to deal with. But now looking back at Mike's hint, she tells you to use Majo's can attack, and the reason for that is because it has a high number of hitboxes that are enough to deal with the purple ball of death. Nuking it with Ayame's fireballs is also good. She doesn't send projectiles, you can reflect. So if she's close, use slice. If she's far away, you use projectiles. If you want to avoid hitting Mary's copies with the projectiles, Eve Sensei attack is a good choice. And so the fight ends. Mary is convinced of Akuji's strength, and we head into the so long awaited witch trial, which Lulu is excited now because there she is in her Gofurori costume. If you touch her chest enough times, she gets very displeased. She stops doing a cute voice and lets out a pretty deep one. And that's what, the third or fourth time Akuji is called a Rorikon in the game? So what can we do here? On Mary's loathing stage, if you rub her back 3 times, you undo the strings. The binoculars give you a close-up of her back as well. On her initial stage, if you blow her skirt 3 times, it gets blown up hard. If you touch her stomach 3 times, you lift the top up to see her belly button. Nothing really to be done on her first good stage, but in her second one, if you touch both her shoulders, bend the base of her poncho in quick succession. Whoa, video games are fun. And this is what happened when you fail the witch trial.
さっさと離れろや、おたんこなすが。踏みつぶすぞ。
You know, what am I doing here? I kind of think to myself, this game caught the attention of people due to the touching minigames, but really, it was always meant to be a Bishoujo game. The touching minigames are a big selling point, but it did end up with people focusing too much into it, so I guess what I'm doing here is I want to demystify this series, show people what exactly it is. I don't expect people to go along with it, or to not find me creepy. Expected really, at this point. I'm not going to, nor I want to tell anyone how they should feel or think, but I do feel there was considerable care put into this game, so I want to show it. I want to show it was made seriously, and it has much more value in it than just being sort of a meme. And there is the witch crest, on her belly.
メリータンの初めてを捧げちゃいました。
With this, they fully prove Mary is a witch. Akuji got used to her magic, and her recording is complete, so with this, we're done. Mary has fallen asleep, and she joins the group. Mary's sweet communication can actually be unlocked on chapter 5, in a side story where Akuji is thinking of buying dinner, and she tackles him and invites him to dinner in her house, and if you accept, Akuji ends up cooking dinner himself since Mary doesn't know how to. Not much to do, honestly. Getting on her good side is really easy since she already likes Akuji, but she does let slip her real side once in a while, and eventually, you two get married.
幸せです。白人様、メリー一生大事にするです。
The 8th chapter begins with Akuji and Lulu going to school at night, looking for Maho, who was late coming back home, not in the changing room, but Lulu does take some souvenirs with her, with the initials Y, Y, and D, C. They meet quite an unexpected duo in the field. Maria is looking for spiritual hotspots, and Mary is here to gaze at the moon. Now that's more like it. About this time, the sky gets covered in light. Mary slams her face in an invisible wall that seems to be surrounding the school. The outside can't be seen anymore as well. Maria seems happy about this, must be the work of a witch. Not even explosives work on the wall, so they head to the infirmary where Eve Sensei is. She seems to be aware of what's going on. Maria and Mary weren't good enough to fulfill Akuji's needs, so he needs the techniques of an adult teacher to get out feeling pretty good. Meaning they need someone skillful enough to deal with such a strong type of magic. However, this space was meticulously crafted, so doing that won't be so simple. This closed space is called Labyrinth of Knowledge. To get out, they need to find the center of the labyrinth, which will likely be guarded by the person who created the space. It might be a bit dangerous, but Maria and Mary already left the room before saying that, so no point in worrying about it. Akuji finds a weird cocoon mess in the wall of the gymnasium and Mary crying. This is a defense mechanism of the Labyrinth of Knowledge that restrains its targets and makes them powerless. Maria might be inside. Akuji uses the Angel Blade, but there was nothing in there. Mary had used a copy to take her place like a lizard cutting off its own tail, and that copy already disappeared. Here's Maria safe and sound. Now on the food court... Oh, Renge. Her mom confiscated her games, so she ran away from home. Then she got caught by the Labyrinth of Knowledge. These things create resistance towards attacks it receives, so the Angel Blade is now ineffective. How do we even pronounce a dialogue box made to look like an actual menu? Mary beats the cocoon in stereo, which only manages to make Renge sick from shaking it too much. Eve Sensei easily blows it up, and so Renge is free, at the cost of Eve Sensei's powers becoming unusable. Climbing up the stairs, the wall is covered so they can't go through. It seems the barrier absorbs magical powers, so if the creator of this barrier's objective is to obtain these powers, there's a good chance everyone else is here as well. Ayame's voice can be heard, However, her chest can't be seen. She's on the other side of the wall. She says something about going full force, so Akuji tells Renge to set up a barrier. She seems to be missing some capsules, whatever game reference that is, and Maria just makes her down some stimulants. She sets up the barrier, and Ayame uses her magic to take down the wall and joins them. Climbing the floors, we have another wall. We have explosives, we have a staff member saying it's not her problem because she doesn't own the building. Time to go boom! When they notice the person throwing the bomb might get hurt, Mary steps forward to deal with herself. Mary is dead. Mary is alive! Time to meet with the others. Yuma is here due to chasing a monster, and we get some exposition. These monsters are made of lumps of energy and act as projections of desire. And Eve Sensei seems to know who's behind them. They usually appear on spots where witches gather, and the Angel World have a plan to deal with them. So she tells Yuma he has to endure just a little longer. The Labyrinth of Knowledge is a forbidden spell in the Angel World, so the person who created it has to be known by Eve Sensei, who turns out to be the Archangel that demanded Akuji to look for witches right at the beginning of the game. This Archangel wants to obtain witch powers, but why, she doesn't know. For now, they look for Maho. Yuma sniffs her out, but's not sure where she is exactly. Lulu is happy to have found someone else who likes smelling things. Lulu thinks Maho is not even here due to being a low-level witch, but Eve Sensei reveals she's actually filled with potential. Transforming into another form of herself is actually her borrowing a future form, a witch that can control time. She even reveals her true name, which I'm not trying to pronounce, the single daughter of a living legend that stalked even in the Angel World. Ayame heard of him as well, currently a saint that travels the human world to help people. Despite all this, to them, Maho is still Maho. To Ayame, cute things are cute. Cute is justice. And they leave it at that, with Eve Sensei asking them to keep this a secret from Maho herself. They return to the infirmary to treat Yuma's wounds, and surprisingly, there lies Maho. She wakes up and tells them she was caught by an angel, but saved by someone, although she doesn't remember the details well. With the only thing left being confronting the Archangel, Eve Sensei tells them they should let her do it alone, but Maho interjects. Eve Sensei has been working hard to deal with this Archangel, and her job is to support those who try hard, especially ones she considers a companion by now. Everyone's on the same boat besides the Renge, who wants to get out because she remembered she still has a Neo Geo left in Akuji's house. Oh, Renge. Eve Sensei thanks all of them, so they head to the rooftop where the Archangel likely is. This is a short chapter, since this all happens in the span of a single night, but there are still some side stories. For example, Ayame asking to be alone so she can pet her Shikigami, showing that despite appearing composed, she's quite anxious about the situation. Renge short, where she says her heart is not feeling well, but she meant the central part of her Neo Geo pocket, and starts explaining how gamers of a past time all used to fix their machines by themselves. Yuma short, where Akuji hears some suspicious dialogue between Yuma and Eve Sensei, so he barges in because his Yuma might be in danger. By his Yuma, he means his important friend Yuma. But Yuma was just nauseous from being fed too much donuts in cooking class. Yuma, please don't say that like that. Renge short, where they roleplay fighting the last boss, portrayed by Lulu. Yuma short, where he thanks Akuji for teaching him he's not alone and offers Akuji his lap for him to sleep on. Also, if you visit the school shop, Xiaomao, the shop owner, is still there, running the shop 24/7. And even aware of the Labyrinth of Knowledge, although she doesn't tell you why she knows these things. Alright, so the Archangel. Maho takes down the last wall, and on the rooftop, there is a starway to heaven, being created using the powers absorbed by the labyrinth and expanding. They climb up to the Angel World, or rather, a copy of it. Similar in appearance, but the original has a bunch of angels like Lulu flying around. Renge thinks the Archangel might be in the depths of the Angel World, just like a lonely, sad last boss will be waiting alone for the hero to appear, like a hikikomori who probably kills time playing games. So she wants to play games with whoever that is. But instead of that, the Archangel just comes to them. What an angle, what a composition for her entrance. Akuji feels like her voice and face are familiar. He has met her before inside the school.
ようやく気づいたみたいね。西村悪事。我が名はノエル。この世界の主にして時代の神となる最強の四天使よ。
Sorry, I was a little bit distracted. Can you repeat that? Renge is not impressed, rather she's pissed that the last boss came out where a mid-boss would. The Seraph Noel gets pissed because she was called a mid-boss. This archangel is known for being easily angered. Lulu has done it before by rubbing her ass. Well, that's reasonable then. Maria is making a big deal about her being a seraph, about them being 7 steps higher than an archangel in hierarchy, so she's strong. Lulu seems to have cut corners on her previous explanations about her, since to her, anything above an archangel is just her superior. Maho wonders why Lulu is so different from Eve Sensei, who is also an angel. Noel reacts to that name, thinking Eve is the one who rescued Maho, but that's wrong. Either way, Noel asks Eve what she came here for. She came here to bring Noel back to sanity. Noel created this labyrinth of knowledge due to Eve Sensei cancelling the witch contracts and thus stopping their powers to be sent to her. Her objective is to harvest their powers and create a new angel world and destroy the standard rules and sets of values of the old one. The reason she did that is because... oh wow. If I'm getting this right, their sisters, Eve was blessed with talent and Noel has always been compared to her, expected the same things from her, and along that, people always got disappointed in her by their own accord. So she decided to change the whole world because she was just fed up, meaning she's pulling a tantrum. That is kinda hot, I'm not gonna lie. She even acknowledges the one being the hardest on her is herself. She can't change herself, so she decided to change the world. Due to Noel's heart being closed the hardest towards Eve Sensei, she thinks she can do much, but giving up means nothing can be changed, so the only thing they can do now is to break her fighting spirit. And so, a battle with the creature closest to a god begins. Oh, how far we have come.
新たなる神の前にひれ伏すがいいわ。
Noel has 2 main attacks. She releases the same attack as Eve Sensei and you can send them back to her, but she can also send it back to you once again. When close, she can slash you and it does considerable damage. You have to stop it by attacking her. She also creates these patches of mist which blocks your attacks and they take considerable effort to get rid of. Another way she damages you is that she summons these little blobs that slowly approach you. I find them cute. After you get used to dealing with everything, it becomes quite simple actually. You can do it with just Lulu's Angel Blade or with Yuma's Claws. Most of the damage should be reflecting her energy balls back to her.
見えない。私は神をも超えるもの。認めないわ。
The Seraph Noel is beat, but that's only the first step. We have to look for that crest. By knowing the location of her crest, they can weaken the magic placed on her and return her to normal. The most effective method is to let someone who her heart forgives to do it. So Lulu will do it, or not. Well, of course that person is Akuji, and so the witch trial begins. Alright, so what can we... Oh my god. So what can we do to the Seraph Noel? Well, nothing really on the loathing stage, but it looks like this. The binoculars as well give you a close look to her archangels. And this is what happened if you fail the witch trial.
呆れて物も言えないわ。
On the initial stage, if you touch both sides of the chest in succession, video games are fun! She has a few poses on the initial stage, and in one of them, she opens her legs and you get a clear view of those orange details on her waist. Just make you want to touch them, right? If you do touch them in succession, you get a glimpse of the boundary of 017 to 018. On her first good stage, you see those cloths coming out of her chest. If you rub them, alternatively, you drag them down a little bit. On her second good stage, there she is! It might have been obvious, but the Archangel is the librarian. By the point the fight was over, the whole group was already aware of it. If you remember during the game, she does end up giving advice to Akuji and even helped him sometimes. He remembers her mostly being mad at him, but turns out that if anyone bothers her or break library rules, they would just be kicked out, but with Akuji, she would keep warning him again and again. In a way, she was showing a weak side to Akuji, likely due to how he treated her naturally. You can actually see that in a side story in chapter 6, when Akuji and Maria go to the library to look for information on how to deal with everyone acting weird, and Akuji gets too close to Maria, making her cause a scene. The librarian kicks her out despite being a class chairman, but she makes Akuji stay behind so she can give him a sermon, but doesn't really look like a sermon. So yeah, she has a weak spot for Akuji like every other girl and boy in the group. So in this second stage, if you touch both sides of her chest, video games are fun. If you rub her socks a few times, you drag them down. And if you rub the lower edge of her dress, you raise it up a little bit. And so her angel crest appears. On her right chest, the opposite to Eve Sensei.
力が貴様後で覚えていろ。
Noelle's angel powers start receding and she returns to a more sane state. But she still used forbidden magic and broke the rules of the angel world, so she'll have to be punished for it. However, she's happy Eve forgives her for what she done. She also thanks Akuji, and with this, things have come to a conclusion, and so Eve and Noelle return everything to normal. End chapter. So you can get Noelle's sweet communication back on chapter 5. There's a side story where she wakes up late so she eats at the food court. Akuji notices she's eating very little because she's worried about her weight, and he tells her not to worry about that and you can give her some food. That unlocks another event where Akuji finds himself on the library for reasons not even he understands. Lulu says it's clear he's interested in the librarian and he wants to invite her on a date. Noelle comes to Akuji for making too much noise, and she's been hearing their conversation as well, where they don't really say nice things about her, so to distract her, you can choose to invite her on a date, either on the game center or on the park. If you choose the game center, she just outright rejects it, but if you invite her to the park, she says she feels like he's plotting something and that she's not interested, but decides to go along anyways. Even if a bit unwillingly, she plays on the swing, on the slide, rather she gets stuck on the slide, and they both fall on the sandbox where Akuji cushions her fall, performing an accidental witch trial. In the end, Akuji takes her back home, unlocking her sweet communication. Her house is filled with books, and unsurprisingly, she's a tough nut to crack, who gets mad easily and very little things lead to a positive reaction. Although that's good if you like the idea of her verbally abusing you. Slowly but surely, you start getting to her. She's weak to compliments. Also, it's not in the list of lines, but she does react to the word hysteric. If you ask her if she has siblings, she gets sad, and turns out she wears contacts so the bad eyesight runs in the family. She lets it slip that she likes to go to the game center to play games too. She starts showing interest in Akuji, but he doesn't notice, so she calls him thick-headed. By the way, they all have a kiss scene, which leads to the marriage, but if you ask them repeatedly to marry you with the microphone, that scene is skipped, and so they get married.
あなたがあまりにかわいそうだから仕方なくこうしてあげるのよ。嘘に決まってるでしょ。
And now we head into the finale of the story. 2 weeks have passed and everything went back to normal, although Noelle has disappeared. Lulu calls everyone to the rooftop. With no need for witch hunting, Lulu and Eve Sensei are ready to set off. To the beach! An island on top of that. Eve Sensei brought everyone here to have some fun, and the place even has its own unique map and locations. On one side of the island there is a tower. This place is a touristic spot where, from long before, there were legends about if 2 people climb this lighthouse together, they become much more strongly connected. She tells Akuji the view is nice, so he should go up there. Maybe with someone of his liking. On the other side of the island there is a rocky area. It's a nice place where you can fish, and there's even a cavern. Back on the lodge, Eve-sensei tells the group that the trip is not only a vacation, but for now they all eat curry. Yuma eats mostly salad, and they go to sleep. The next day, 2 more people appear. It's Yukari and Chiyo. Chiyo is here to protect Maho from Stalker Senpai, and Yukari is acting as her guardian. This is the final stretch to choose the ending heroine. There's a total of 13 characters that have endings ranging from happy endings, normal endings, and marriage endings, exclusive to Sweet's communication. Some characters have all 3 of them, some characters have only 1. And Yukari and Chiyo are characters that you can get endings with, so it's not surprising they're here. In the edge of the island, there is a suspicious altar, and there she is. The runaway librarian, former archangel, who's investigating the altar. Lulu is having a blast because after all that happened, technically, they're both of the same rank now. She says this altar was created to worship a demon and asks why he came to this island. And more importantly, if he came by himself. After hearing Eve is here, she leaves, probably to meet her. Later, Akuji is by himself when Maho comes to find him. When they're about to leave, Maho lets out a shriek, and when turning to her, Kiara is also here. Seems that she was on this island before everyone else. Maho tells her where they're staying, and they part ways. Back at the lodge, Eve-sensei appears with a new friend, and everyone seems to be very receptive of her, contrary to her expectations. The reason Noelle disappeared was to search for the witch who casted a spell on her, throwing her in mayhem. By following the remains of the magic, she arrived in this island, but when she got to the altar, the traces of the magic were gone. According to Eve, that altar is used when a big dark thing is inserted using all of one's strength into an opening. According to Noelle, that altar is a facility used when a mighty devil from the demon world forcibly creates a dimensional crevice, meaning that altar can be used as an entrance connecting the human and demon world. But because it's not a proper entrance, there's a need for a large amount of magic power to connect them. At the very least, a monarch level demon, for example, the Demon King, which is a term Renge is happy to hear about. This entity might be on the island right this instant, although Noelle and Eve thinks whoever used the altar might have already returned to the demon world, so they just enjoy the island for now. There are some side stories, like Renge wanting to gift Kiara a sea hare to deepen their friendship, and you can either reason with Renge or Kiara. But one of the high points of this chapter is when any heroine that you have a high score with appears on the map, which leads into a swimsuit event for the one you pick. I went with Kiara since I was on her route already. Everyone is getting ready to go to the beach when Kiara comes out from a bush. Whoa! She wants to stay alone with Maho and tells everyone to get lost. Mary gets mad at Kiara for bad-mouthing Akuji, but Kiara stares her down to the point she starts crying and runs away. Renge challenges her to a game contest. Kiara puts down an invincibility command and beats Renge's high score. She goes away to practice more. Maria tries to hypnotize Kiara to go away, but gets hypnotized instead, so she goes away. Yuma is ready to fight her full force, seeing she managed to deal with Mary, and Kiara screams that he's going to her, playing back some edited lines he said that could be used against him, so he runs away. Ayame borrows Kiara one of her plushies to calm her down. She throws it away, leading to Ayame running after it. With only Akuji left, he tells Maho to run away, and before Kiara can do anything, turns out there's a snail attached to her from the bush, and she starts crying, asking for Akuji to take it off. Oh, we're doing this, huh? Okay. We can take our time getting the snail, right? We can enjoy some flavor text, right? Yep, nice flavor text. That is flavor text, alright. If you interact with the snail enough, you get some options. If you choose that the snail is cute, all Akuji can think of now is the snail, and he stops caring about Kiara. You can throw some salt water on it, and it gets smaller. Okay, took the snail off. She calms down, so Akuji takes her back to where she's staying. She asks him why he helped her, considering he had her weakness, but that ain't his style. He's not bad, just a little bit bad. Kiara shoos him away when they get close to the tower, and so they part ways. That was nice. I kinda want to go through all of them now. Here's Majos and Majo, who's playing with a reverse panda. She found some flowers with Maria and is using them as decoration. The Maria one is her looking for vestiges of ancient civilizations and stuff like that. You two walk around and Akuji hands her a shell. Here, let me make it easier to see the shell. Surprisingly pretty big. That shell, she takes it back as another memory between the two of them. Renge still just talks about Neo Geo, and Akuji tells her to enjoy the sea, but she can't swim, so he offers to teach her. At first, she's a bit suspicious due to things she heard about Akuji from Lulu, but she's thankful. She changes into her Athena swimsuit to help her face her fears. Akuji takes a nap and hears someone trying to wake him up, and only reacts when they call him master. He wakes up to the sight of Ayame, who claims he must have misheard things. He asks her to call him master again, and when they both come back here, just the two of them, she'll do it. For Yuma, the only swimsuit they could find was borrowed from the girls, so once again the wolf boy is on the school swimsuit. Eventually Akuji's leg cramps up and he ends up drowning. He wakes up with Yuma having saved him and wonders what could have been that feeling on his lips he felt. Yuma avoids that conversation. Eve Sensei asks Akuji to cover her in lots of sticky stuff, just your usual Eve Sensei scene, but with a CG to go alongside it. Meaning it was pretty nice. Mary slams into Akuji and invites him to the beach, but she's afraid to be taken by the waves, so they play on the sand. Noelle is separated from everyone, she doesn't feel like playing with the others or doing usual beach activities and comes up with all sorts of excuses to not go swimming. Akuji suggests he could teach her how to swim, but for now she just dips her toes a little bit, demanding Akuji to stay in a position where he can catch her at all times. Akuji heads back, but first tells her she should join them, and she stays back with a smile on her face. Back to the main story, Noelle calls everyone to the altar. It seems the demon has not returned to its world. We're not sure what he wants, but there's precedence. The altar can be used to send a piece of land between worlds, alongside troops for war purposes, or it can be used to transfer someone against their will, as the Demon Lord has tried it previously. If not for war, there really is one person who could be targeted. The first thing Akuji asks is how old the Demon Lord is, funny enough. Could be tens of thousands of years, so Lulu calls the Demon Lord a Rorikon, and Akuji will not forgive this so-called Demon Lord. Majo doesn't seem to know who that witch could be, but don't worry about it. They decide to stay on the island to solve this problem, and for now, they return to vacation mode. It is now that Akuji thinks he wants to make some memories, and you can pick a heroine. I went with the question mark, which ends with Akuji climbing the tower alone, but on the top there is Kanan, Kiara's sister. Akuji joins her and she asks if Akuji is interested in Kiara, and well, I'm already on her route, so might as well go all the way. He says that even though she's stubborn and does whatever she wants, it's nice how upfront and honest she is. Kiara's sister leaves and Kiara appears, hitting Akuji and getting on his side. He asks what she's doing here, and well, she's here because she wants to. She'll be doing as she likes and demands Akuji to stay here for a little longer. Back to the story, Noelle senses magic power coming from the cavern, so she gets Akuji to lead the way so she can focus on the magic, but then she feels something touching her. It was Lulu. Noelle gets fed up and uses illumination magic. Well, look who's here as well. What a coincidence, huh, Mary? They didn't trust Akuji along with Noelle. Wow, lots of people here. Well, after all the events of the game, I can see why. Wow, even Renge is here. Well, Majo isn't here because she wouldn't really follow someone like this, but that also means she's all by herself. They run back to the lodge, but she's nowhere to be found. The flow of magic power is not being led to the altar, so she's not there. She's on the lighthouse. That's also a magic tool created in ancient times. Yuma does smell her, Lulu as well, so there's no choice but to go in. On the way to the top, the path is blocked by magic. Next to the path, there's a suspicious statue which Ayame finds cute. Is it cute? Well, the cute statue starts talking and it tells the group to ask it whatever they want. They just wonder what the hell is up with it, and the statue starts talking about how to proceed, even though no one really asked. There is a strong power hidden within this lighthouse, and using it comes with its set of dangers. Only the chosen one, that of honest of heart, can use it. No one really asked though. The statue gives them 5 trials to test their bonds, and if they complete them, it will be proof of the strength in their hearts and the path will open. The first to step forward is Noelle. The trial is that the group will be able to hear her inner heart, a way to test their bonds by learning about the horrible thoughts one has of their companions. Well, we just learned how much she actually likes and respects Eve, and that she learned from the problem she caused. What a nice girl. She also almost blurts out that she has the hots for Akuji. The first trial ends before that, although it did lead to Noelle taking considerable mental damage. No one really seemed to want to be the next in line to have their hearts read by Akuji, so he appoints Renge to be the next due to, being Renge. She and the voice of her heart starts having a conversation about Ikari warriors, and the statue had enough. Next to step forward is Eve Sensei. She says like 3 lines, and the statue had enough. The statue decides to let Renge and Eve pass the trial, but it will change the next trials, so now you can pick your poison. Choosing Maria leads to her telling she has another place to shine, so you have to pick someone else. If you pick Ayame, the statue creates 2 copies of her, one who tells the truth, one who tells lies, and everyone has to guess who's who. Ayame though loves cute things. She wants to have a room with 100 plushies, be covered with cute things, but she works as a Miko and grew to be too tall, so because it's unfitting, she keeps it a secret. Aya Miko lives a disciplined life, suitable of her position of Miko, and keeps on her ascetic practices for the sake of polishing herself. Her motto is to be more than excessively cautious. Ayame sides with the Ayamiko, but you know how it is. Ayameido also seems to not like the Miko clothing too much. She's not tricking anyone, just be honest, Ayame. The statue confirms that Ayameido is her true self, who really loves frilly clothes. If you pick Yuma, the statue gives him the trial of reliving a memory. Everyone has something they don't want to remember, especially between close friends. Sometimes they fight amongst each other, so the statue makes Yuma and Akuji relive such memory. It's the witch trial, a mock play of it. It seems the statue read those memories as fighting amongst each other, and in a way, it was a fight? If you pick Mary, she's given the trial of how much she understands the power of her companions, so you fight a copy of Eve Sensei with only Lulu and Mary. It felt to me like an excuse to teach the player that some of Mary's abilities work against Eve Sensei. The statue gives out the last trial. It will release anti-magic power, and the more power one holds, the more hurt they will get to test if one can get hurt for their friends. So the statue is pretty much asking for a sacrifice. Teehee! Akuji steps forward, even though he has magic running in him from all those contracts, but he can't really tell anyone to go at this point. As he was about to receive the attack, Maria pushes him away and receives the blow. With this act of sacrifice, all trials are complete. Akuji is in shock, but well, Maria is not really a witch, so she's fine. He makes her promise to not do something rash like that ever again, and so the statue opens the path to the place where all magic power is converging. The lighthouse itself is a magic circle used for transference. There is Maho, who's doing well. She's thankful for everyone who came here to save her. However, Kiara is also here, and she was the one who brought Maho to this place. She seems to be the so-called devil. Noelle warns Kiara to stop whatever she's doing, but Kiara recognizes her as the weak-hearted seraph that fell for her magic. Eve asks Kiara about her true identity, and well...
カナン、約束の地へ至ることを望む者。カナン・キアラ。
Lulu seems impressed. Lulu seems quite impressed. Kiara takes down Lulu with a glance, and she tells them she has been called many things, such as She Who Is Black and Carmilla. Eve-sensei wants to know what her objective is, that she would ignore the orders of the Demon Lord for the purpose of taking away Maho. Well, she did have the mission to get Maho, but she decided she didn't really want to hand her over to the Demon Lord, because he's stupid. Good enough reason for me. Besides, she herself likes Maho, which is nice if you ignore the whole kidnapping thing. Akuji tells her that she's been ignoring Maho's feelings, so she asks Maho about it. Maho is happy Kiara likes her, but she wants to stay in this world to support everyone who's working hard. Unfortunate, but well, Maho might change her mind eventually since the transportation magic's already ongoing. The power directed to the tower was for the sake of transporting them into a newly created world, just the two of them. One would think she would give up upon hearing Maho's true feelings, but she seems to take enjoyment in stealing your girl. She's a devil after all. She also did try all sorts of things throughout the game to keep Maho away from Akuji, but they all failed. In the end, she still doesn't want to hand Maho to anyone, be it Akuji or the Demon Lord. Akuji wants Maho to do as she pleases, so he can't forgive Kiara's actions, and Kiara sees this as a good opportunity to get Akuji to stop being a hindrance to her plans.
おかしな絵に仕事この場で叩き潰してくれる
So Kiara has a few ways to damage you. She attacks you directly, she charges at you from the back, and with a well-timed hit, she changes position to the front. You can slash her, but it's easier to just send a projectile that does a straight line. She charges a magic attack, making the screen dark and directing dark orbs at you, which can be stopped by Ayame or Renge's barrier. She summons chains that moves across the screen, eventually heading towards you. Slashing them is the best way to deal with it. With Yuma, you have to hit each 3 times, with the Angel Blade twice, but with Noel, you can get them in a single hit, which makes it the most convenient. Noel attacks in Ultimate are also the ones that deal the most damage. You also get her slimes that passively get summoned. At first you don't really get a chance to use an ultimate because as you deal enough damage to Kiara, she conjures a magic circle and all of a sudden you're fighting an actual demon. It is a 2-stage fight. I'm not sure if this is a true form of her, if this is the Demon Lord or a lackey, or if we've been teleported to the demon world. What I know is that I got a few game overs here. So what does this guy do? When it opens its mouth, it does this very annoying roar that doesn't really do damage, but it freezes you, so you have to keep mashing. Ayame's barrier fully block it, although Renge's barrier doesn't. Maria's bombs also block this quite well. When it lifts each leg in succession, it charges its head at you, which can be stopped if you hit it or simply block it with something. Maria's bombs are really good for this. Sometimes it launches energy orbs at you, and these are quite slow, so just using Renge to send back the magic attack is good for this. When it lifts both legs and it shows this red indication, it means it will launch shockwaves towards you. Guess what work against these? Maria's bombs. Sometimes it starts charging a very strong attack, takes a lot of HP out of you. You have to stop it by hitting it with a few projectiles, but if you feel like you don't have much time, Maria's bombs. They shine in this boss fight. After you beat this demon, you're back to Kiara right where you left off, but she doesn't have any more cards up her sleeve, so as long as you don't mess up, you should already know how to deal with it. And so, Kiara is defeated.
いくつも女この私が男に負けるなんて
The transportation magic is still ongoing, and the only way to stop it is if Kiara cancels the magic, but she won't do that. So, we got to find that crest. All for the sake of saving Maho. Yes, only for the sake of saving Maho. So what can we do here? I wonder where her weak spot is. Yep, it's effective. So on her loathing stage, if you rub the hook on her back a few times, you undo it. Wow, 10 lines on brown skin. This is advanced character design. The binoculars give you a better look at it too. And this is what happens when you fail the witch trial.
やっぱり男なんて大嫌いさっさと消えろ
Interesting thing about her is that if you look at her face in any way, you get a negative reaction. She just doesn't want to look at your face at all. On her initial stage, you have the classic combo of chest touch and skirt flap. On her first good stage, if you rub her chest a few times, her clothing gets pulled to the sides. On her second good stage, if you rub her garter belt a few times, you take it off, and if you rub her chest a few times, you get a modest jiggle. Eventually her crest comes up on the side of her stomach.
こんなことをされても私は何も
With Kiara weakened, Eve-sensei tries to remove the magic, but due to the sheer amount of it, 5 minutes until explosion. The only way to stop it is to use everyone's power, and it also depends on Maho, who is learning about her true powers just now. With no other plan, and with the trust of everyone on her back, Maho takes upon herself to do it, turning into her true form to not waste magic. Also, when Kiara learns about Chibi Maho being Maho, everyone focuses on holding back the energy leak, and they manage to avert the crisis. Maho felt everyone helping her, but also the support of someone else. On the floor next to them, a fallen flower. Flowering Quince. She's been looked after this whole time. There is still excess magic remaining, so Maho decides to return to the witch world to use it up. The angels as well decide to do the same. With magic remaining that could destroy this island, Kiara as well decide to return since Maho wouldn't be here anymore. Akuji gets mad at her since she caused all this in the first place, but she returns to her child form because Akuji doesn't get mad at kids. At the very least, Akuji gets her to apologize. Not really, but it's okay, she's cute, so I forgive her. It is now time to say goodbye. Maria makes Akuji say his goodbyes too, because if you don't convey such things properly, you just end up regretful. Words coming from a childhood friend after all.
だからそれまでちょっとだけさよならです。さようなら、真帆様。バイバイ。悪事。
Akuji returns to his normal life. Maria is feeling a bit down due to not being able to question Kiara about being a demon, and because the angels and Maho returned. They get to her house and Akuji tells her that if their exciting days are gone, all they have to do is to look for new ones. Akuji reflects on those heart-throbbing days and roll credits. That was fun. It was definitely more on the light-hearted side, but I quite like stuff like that. Hiro Hiroki. I recognize that name. And me! Special thanks to me! And a thank you to you, SNK Playmore. Of course, we have post-credit scenes. You get to see the ending of the heroine you got the closest to. Akuji's pondering about his return to a boring life when the door rings and, as expected, here's Kiara, who was also bored in the demon world, so she returned. Also, if Maho ends up coming back, she would definitely come here. Considering her true form of a girl of age, Kiara waiting in Akuji's house could be troublesome, not like she cares, she's a devil after all. Besides, she wouldn't mind if it was Akuji. Kiara doesn't really have anywhere to go, and Akuji can't let the girl stay alone like that, so he gives in. She's actually surprised due to everything she did, but he tells her not to mind that, or that she's a devil, and tells her to get in. She gladly accepts, and then hugs him.
知らないの？悪魔は人間にとってとても危険な存在なのよ。男にしては見どころのあるやつだし。全力で取り付いてあげる。覚悟しなさい。この果報もの。
So after the game ends, you unlock some things depending on how many reverse pandas you get. The gallery mode, where you can see all the CGs you've unlocked, and you can replay certain scenes as well. Extra side stories that you need to unlock by doing certain things. Right now they're not all unlocked, since for most of them I need to get more reverse pandas and chemos. A survival mode, where you go through a battle gauntlet. Some extra scenarios are unlocked by reaching up to 12 wins, and you can even unlock Star Radish on the menu if you beat 10 enemies in a row. A free witch check mode, where you do any witch trial at any time you want. You unlock this by getting 50 or more reverse pandas. Kimos are worth 3 reverse pandas. The Doki Majo Field Guide, where you can check character profiles, character sprites in different backgrounds, character voice lines, and all the main characters have a letter next to the menu that, when touched, you get to hear a monologue by this character.
そうです、しもべよ。これからルル様はしもべの文句をと言ってやるので、耳を塞ぐがいいですよ。塞ぎましたか？では、行きますですよ。しもべ、ルル様はしもべのことが大好きなのですよ。何を言ってたのかですと？そんなことはしたこっちゃありません。しもべはルル様のためにイブローニとフェーブ豆を用意すればいいのです。ほれ、とっとと買いに行ってくるがいいですよ。
Apparently Mary is 30 strawberries tall and 30,000 almonds heavy. Eve and Noel were born on Christmas Eve and Christmas. Makes sense since their family name, Seiya, means holy night. Watabiki is written with pulling and cotton, Mochizuki with desire and moon. Well, I'm sure all their names must hold a meaning. I kinda refuse to believe the difference between the two Mahos is only 8 kilos. For some reason she looks heavier. Anyways, we are still missing some Sweets communication. Not this one though, that's Irenge's that I lost because I accidentally messed up my save file. 6 hours of progress. Naturally, you can also get Kiara's Sweet communication, but you can also unlock Lulu's Sweet communication after getting her ending. The game has 32 endings. I am not going to try to get all of them, but I, at the very least, want to get Lulu's. Which means I will go through the game again, get Lulu's ending, and Kiara's Sweet communication along the way, which you can only get on a second playthrough, and might as well get the remaining reverse pandas and kimos, where a bunch of them only appears on your second playthrough as well. Thank God for guides. It is very kind of them to let you skip the prologue. So on chapter 6 is where you get Kiara's Sweet communication on a side event. Kiara buys a ton of tomatoes and tomato-related products, and it's too much for her to take back home. Akuji offers to help, and she piles everything on him. And turns out that the whole time she's been living inside the school clock tower. She gives some tomatoes to Akuji as thanks, and even sprinkles some lemon and garlic powder. Fancy! When Akuji says he has to go, she sounds disappointed, and Akuji promises he'll come back, unlocking her Sweet's communication. Fun thing, the last event of chapter 7 impeded my ability to check the map where I can get another reverse panda, meaning I have to replay all this again to get it. It was the only reverse panda I couldn't get on this playthrough. I also didn't manage to get Lulu's ending. I ended up getting Maho's normal ending where Akuji misses her. Also, because I thought getting Kiara's Sweet communication would unlock it on the free suite, I never actually ended up doing it and it wasn't there. This run was useless. Back to the grind. I got Kiara's Sweet communication and did it on the spot. This one is nice if you like the idea of a little girl berating and hitting you. She calls you stupid dog. If you ask her free sizes, she hits you. If you ask her to sit on your lap, she hits you. If you just imagine her sitting on the chair and thinking about how her feet wouldn't even reach the ground, she hits you. I guess you deserve all that. One thing that's interesting to me is that they presumed not only guys would be playing this game, since in every Sweets communication, you can ask the character to call you Oni-chan or One-chan. If you tell her you want to take her back with you, she calls the police. Well, she jokes about it. She responds badly to almost all ways you call her and badmouths you for it, which is why I kept doing it. She steps on Akuji for massage reasons. There are several tomato-related events. At first, if you say you like Maho more than she does, she likes to see you as an enemy. But as it progresses, she becomes a bit dejected because she thinks she wouldn't be able to win against Maho. She lets Akuji touch and brush her hair when previously she didn't let him, and eventually, of course,
感謝しなさい。お前は男だけど誰よりも一番愛してあげる。
Alright, back to the grind. I got the last reverse panda and finally got in the Lulu route. To get the Lulu ending, you have to finish the Masaru events. If you remember Masaru, he's the small fairy-loving otaku introduced on the beginning of the game. He has an event that becomes available every chapter just before the witch fights. At first, he hears the rumors of Akuji talking to himself and asks him, "You talking to fairies?" But nothing really comes out of it. Things change when he's beaten up to near death for making fun of some delinquents, and due to being in a state close to going to heaven, he manages to see Lulu, believing her to be one of his beloved little fairies. At one point, he even hits himself with a hammer to be able to see her and becomes increasingly obsessed with her. This series of events end with Akuji looking for Lulu and having a bad feeling. He runs around the school looking for her and finds her screaming for help, tied up in the gym storehouse, with Masaru just about to change her clothes. A mad Akuji demands to know what Masaru is doing to his Lulu and makes him let her go. Masaru trips and passes out, and so Lulu comes to Akuji's arms, crying, believing this whole time he would find her. And she thought he ended up being cool. Just a little bit. On Lulu's happy ending, Akuji returns to an empty house, missing the noisy little angel. He was left only with a cross given by her, and he falls asleep on the sofa to be awakened by someone calling him a servant. It is Lulu in her true form, a form that's only shown to those who are important to her, though he can't see her properly. She tells him orders from the angel world are absolute, but she sees Akuji wants to meet her again. It is then Akuji awakens from his dream. The next day, he opens the door to his home, feeling sad, and as he opens it, there she is, awaiting him at the entrance.
会いに来てやったですよ、西村悪事。
Oh Lulu, you're not a tiny gremlin anymore. With this, Lulu's sweet communication become available on the free suite screen, and it's just Akuji's living room. Well, she seems comfortable. Lulu is very behaved on this sweet communication because she is a glass cannon. She can say the most obscene things, but when pure love is on the table, she does a 180. There's only one thing to do when you get this close. Oh my, I want to pick all these options. Well, I see, she won't let you kiss her so easily. She lets it slip. Once in a while she thinks Akuji is cool, she asks you to squeeze her. On this sweet communication, the one who frequently has to go away is Lulu. I guess she wasn't even supposed to be here, and transforming to this form seemed to be tiring, and she's doing for Akuji's sake because it seems he likes this form better. When she's sitting on the sofa, if you check under it, she accuses you of trying to look under her skirt. If you do it again, she says she would show it to you if you want it, just a little bit. If you do ask, she changes her mind. At first, she didn't let you touch her wings, but later on, she does. They're sensitive. This does seem to be her true form, but lots have happened in 10,000 years, so it's not clear what's happening. Akuji asks her to come close and open her mouth. She panics a little bit, but he just wanted to give her candy. And eventually...
しょうがないですね。しもべが孤独で哀れなので一生ついていてあげるのですよ。
That was nice. I kinda want to unlock every extra story now, so I did some survival mode and got exactly 12 wins for the side stories. Also unlocked Star Radish. To unlock the last 2 extra stories, I need to get Noel's ending and Yukari's. It was at this point I started thinking, I'm not very interested in the normal endings, but I don't think I would mind getting 11 extra endings to see how the happy endings look like. Starting with the little witch Majo, Akuji keeps returning to the place Majo took care of her cats, reminiscing about her, when he hears a familiar laugh. Turns out that Majo broke the regulations of the witch world for escaping into the human world to search for her mother, thus leading into her being prohibited of ever returning. However, Akuji welcomes her not as her witch self, but as Akai Majo.
マホ、目をつぶって。
でもマホはこんな見た目で小さいままじゃ。せめて変身を。
そのままの 真帆でいいんだ。
悪事さん。
Now, the childhood friend Maria were on a date reminiscing the days we were hunting witches. He's still wearing the same clothing, the bastard. She thinks the legend of the lighthouse is the reason they finally are united. And for the longest time, she was fine with just being close to him, but is finally happy to be in a proper relationship.
私は阿部マリアはまーちゃんはあなたのことが大好きでした。小さい頃からずっとだからずっとこれからもこうしてそばにいてくれる？
For the game-brained Renge, they play some Neo Geo Pocket together in the lighthouse, and she tells Akuji she's happy to spend this time together with him, never taking her face away from the console from embarrassment. On her happy ending, we're already going out. Renge buys shoes for Akuji due to his shoes being worn out, which she bought by breaking her piggy bank. We're matching shoes, and she just really enjoys going places and spending time with him.
あとそれよりもゲーセン行くのですに。おに、今日こそ2人で怒りと怒号造形をワンコインクリアするのです。
With the Miko-made wit student Ayame, she and Nakuji are on a festival looking at the fireworks. The rest of the group seemingly busy or just being thoughtful for them. Akuji is more entranced on Ayame than on the fireworks, for to him, Ayame is prettier, cuter.
ありがとう。君が言ってくれたのだから、その言葉信じてみたいと思う。大好きな君だけのために。君？
I'm sure that was just a kiss. For Wolf Boy Yuma and just a little bit bad Akuji, who both say they wish to stay with each other on the lighthouse, after everything is solved, Akuji finds Yuma on the rooftop. The demons that lurked the night were finally suppressed. Yuma thanks Akuji for helping and being there for him. In the end, he reminisces all his fallen comrades.
僕、やり遂げたんですね。
ユーマ。
西村さん、前に僕の尻尾を触ったことがありましたよね。あの話覚えてますか？
ああ、覚えてる。ユーマ、これからは俺がお前を守ってやる。俺が世界で一番お前を大切にしてやる。だから
西村さん、恥ずかしいです。
I'm sure that was just a kiss. On Eve Sensei's route, Akuji feels like he's forgetting something quite important. Akuji returns to the island and remembers he met Eve once before when she was a trainee. She healed his wounds, which is why he felt it had happened before. She tells him to cheer up and that she thinks boys are cooler when they're just a little bit bad. And Akuji answers that by saying he will work hard to become cool and then he'll become her husband. She says she'll think about it and they share a promise. Which is also why Akuji feels like he's forgetting something when they share a promise on the main game, and why Maria said Akuji wanted to marry a girl that can use magic when they were kids.
約束。それってやっぱりあの時の俺との。
ずっと待ってたあなたとの思い出を、約束を果たせる日が来ることを。私だけのちょい悪さん、あなたとの約束をこれからも信じ続けていいですか？
For little Mary, many years have passed, and due to family circumstances, she had to move. However, even when separated, due to her powers, they can be together. Mary grew to a size similar to Akuji, however she still acts like the little Mary of the past.
大丈夫です。メリーがこんな口調になるのは大好きな悪事様の前だけなんです。
On Miss Librarian Noel, who Akuji confesses to in the lighthouse, he is doing homework, or rather, he was made to do homework, and he smells the curry made for him, even though the person who made it isn't that good at cooking. When Akuji wonders where Noel is, he hears a scream.
もう悪事なんで湯船が水なのよ。お風呂入ったって言ったじゃないの。
確かに風呂には入ったけど、シャワー浴びただけだもん。沸かしてねえよ。
湯船には毎日入りなさい。バッチじゃないの。わかった？悪事？
それよりノエル、ちょっとさ、目のやり場に困るんだけど。
何？なんでこんな人間と。
In the case of Chio-chan, Akuji is out shopping when she appears taking notes about Akuji, who calls her the stalker. She's observing him so he doesn't find someone new to stalk, since he's been feeling down since Maho went away. Chio has already been frequently going to Akuji's house and even spent the night there sometimes with the acknowledgement of her parents. She clings to him as to not let him find another stalking target and calls him Akuji-senpai instead of Stalker-senpai. Unfortunately, the scene is not voiced. In Yukari's case, Akuji simply goes on a date with her. She only has one ending, and it's not a happy ending, but a simple normal ending. However, it does unlock the short story where you go through the date. Just to piss me off a little bit, the last ending is also Kiara's, but on her Kanan form. Akuji is thinking about the events that happened and was feeling bad for doing what seemed to be demon extermination. When wondering how she's doing, the doorbell rings. Akuji says he doesn't want to buy anything or sign any contracts, but there is Kiara, who wouldn't mind a contract with Akuji, his soul, in exchange for 3 wishes. She's interested in his soul due to being acquainted with angels and the Witch of Time. Akuji doesn't really have one, so she tells him to close his eyes for she'll read his heart to see what he desires the most. But he's just happy to be able to meet her again. He opens his eyes to see Kiara kissing him, for that was the most desired wish.
それは私も私たち2人が望んだこと。男でも構わない。お前のことを愛してるから。
That was all nice. Now let me complain a little bit. Took 2 tries to get Chio's ending and 2 tries to get Yukari's ending, and that's because I forgot about the event where you can vote for the Miss Contest, which greatly raises that character's score for the ending. Yukari's ending is likely impossible to get without it. To rub salt on the wound, it took 3 tries to get Big Kiara's ending because I wasn't sure how to. At first, I ended up getting her normal ending, where she returns for Akuji, but her hate for men is still stronger than her love for Akuji, so she turns him into a girl. I think in total, I finished this game 20 times, and I'm done. I'm just going to go through the extra side stories now. The first extra is Akuji praying on the temple, wishing for a peaceful life. Next to him is Mike, praying for the gods to give her ideas for her manga. She recognizes Akuji and Lulu, and she can see Lulu because she knows everything. Mike asks Akuji for help. She knows they've been doing some touchy stuff named Witch Trials, and since she's doing a similar scene, she wants to experience it as well. Just be gentle, Akuji.
うぜえ。
So this is an actual witch trial, although a short one with one single stage. If you rub her skirt 3 times, you lift it up a little bit. Also, she does not like at all if you touch her ears. What a waste. But realistic, I guess. Her crest looks like a cat, which even Lulu is confused about. Well, Mike is happy, and she returns to her office to draw more. And that's the end. Now, you might be wondering, who is Mike? What is this character? Well, the character is called Yagamike, and it's actually referencing the mangaka Yagami Ken, who is more well known for drawing the manga Nanaka 6/17 in 2001, which got an anime adaptation in 2003. And he is also the mangaka for the Doki Doki Majo Shinpan manga series, which does differ from the game on how it tells its story. Due to this manga not having an interactive touchscreen, the trials are done at the whim of Lulu, who brings out magical tools to perform them, which leads to a bunch of unusual but still entertaining stuff. There's a whole chapter where everyone's transported to the famous Ero Manga Island, which is a real place, albeit written differently in English. And Akuji and Eve Sensei play out several hentai manga scenarios, not crossing the line of course. Here's another DVD reference. There's even a story that even Yagami Ken was worried if he crossed a line, where Akuji stimulates a kokeshi placed on Yuma, and it ends with Akuji putting that kokeshi into his mouth. The producer of the game just told him to put Yuma in pajamas and unbutton the front. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but some ideas seem to have been used in both the manga and the remake Doki Majo Plus, such as the chapter where everyone gets infatuated with Akuji. They even have the between the legs shot. This manga ends quite differently though, with Lulu being the one possessed by evil magic and becoming the evil mastermind. A twist that's honestly not uncharacteristic to her. She's very cute in her devil form too. I wouldn't mind this at all. The manga ends with Lulu sacrificing herself to destroy a falling spaceship and roll credits. And me! Thanks to me! A shadow approaches the group who expects Lulu, but it's actually what seems to be the character that plays the same role as Lulu in the second game of the series, which I haven't played yet. This manga is chock full of references. Here's Maria as Doremi, and ooh, Frankenfran. Mainly Ayame cosplaying of course. Here's her as Inku from Moetan. The maid cafe is even called Nice Boat, that's okay. Here's her dress as Alicia from Aria, who then gets attacked by Renge as Ika Musume. Also, every time Ayame gets mad, she becomes a parody of Shigurui. I don't even know what to say about this one. It is nice to see that the mangaka also ended up becoming a character. There's even a blog post featuring them. Every reader has to buy 10 volumes of Toki Rajo. The second story is that Maho won a giant tuna can from a contest, but they don't have a giant can opener, so they call for help. The whole cast can make an appearance, and you just enjoy what happens. Some people fail, some don't even try, some destroy the can, at least one of them sells it away. The third one is one where Maho gives Chiyo grammar problems, which is hard to translate, but the gist of it is that she's dumb. Number 4 is a recreation of The Little Match Girl featuring the flat Maho, written by Lulu. Number 5 is Akuji and Maho getting a huge plushie for Ayame in the game center, and she invites them to her room. Maho is enchanted by the plushies, Ayame is enchanted by Maho. Quite a healing scene. Number 6 is a scene of Chibi Maho and Kiara on the beach. This is the only time the Chibi Maho swimsuit sprite is used. Just some wholesome fun between girls. Number 7 is a story where every character becomes Akuji's little sister. Number 8 is a simple story about Lulu wanting to do fireworks, and for some reason it's done in full screen text style, and everyone gathers on the school grounds with yukatas. Maho even makes Lulu a small one. Honestly, it was quite a lovely story. Number 9, Maria, Ayame, Akuji and Maho head to school at night to look into school mysteries, and it takes a turn into becoming an actual horror story. I actually quite liked it. I am a coward, but this made me want to try something. Number 10 is a story where no matter where Akuji goes, Noel gets mad and breaks something, like a guitar on the floor or a hoop by dunking on it. Number 11 is a story where Lulu spreads that Akuji likes cats. Mary starts saying nyan, Yuma asks if he's not good enough and gets taken by a passing Ayame. Noel also learns about it. Nyan. Number 12 is Akuji reading a new version of the book Ayame likes so much, New Princess Sakura and the 8 Peaches. And it's a story where a spoiled princess kills one magical peach each night to eat them, and when she eats the last one, turns out it had drank cyanide beforehand, and so everyone is dead. Number 13 is Masaru being summoned by Noel to be given the witch hunting mission. But he goes crazy as soon as Lulu appears, they punish him, send him back, Lulu forgets about what happened due to how stressful it was, and they bring the next human for the mission, which ended up being Akuji. Number 14 features a character from Doki Doki Majo Shinpan 2, which I haven't played, so I'm skipping. Number 15 is a story where Akuji becomes a reverse panda and it's just a game over simulator. If Ayame finds you, she kills you by rubbing you too much. Maria dissects you, the other occult member abducts you, Maho feeds you mackerel and doesn't let you go. There's only game overs. Number 16 is Akuji trying to imagine a Renge that doesn't play games, and after many tries he can only imagine her without the light in her eyes and looking down on him for not growing up on his little bit bad ways. Number 17 is a continuation to Yukari's date. If you act badly, the date ends soon. If you do well, she kisses you in the end. In number 18, Noel wants Akuji to do it to her. The witch trial, she means. She's running out of magic power, so she can't keep up the librarian form much longer. So by stimulating her witch crest, she can charge her magic power. Wow, Noel, you get to have 2 witch trials? Yes! This is the last witch trial of the game, and this time she starts as the librarian and ends as a seraph, with a whole new set of poses and reactions. There's not much you can do on her loathing stage. I just find it interesting that she seems aware about how short her dress actually is. On her first stage, if you rub the edge of her dress, you lift it up a little bit. Touching each breast alternatively makes them jiggle. Rubbing her right stocking rolls it down. On her first good stage, rubbing her necktie a few times, it pushes it in between her chest. The binoculars focuses on the area as well. And this is what happened if you fail the witch trial.
もうからかうのもいい加減にしなさい。
On her final stage, she turns into Seraph Noel, and the last custom animation of the game is having fun with video games. And so the crest appears, and the witch trial is successful.
こんな屈辱。
Unfortunately, Noel asked Akuji to replenish her magic, and completing the witch trial meant discharging her magic power. Also, apparently, on the first witch trial, the reason why she went from Seraph to Librarian mode is because Akuji made her good to know. Well, I gotta stop at some point, otherwise I'll be here forever, but you might have been wondering, how did this game do? I don't really quite know about game sales, what is good and what is bad, but the first Doki Doki Majo Shinpan apparently sold 33,000 units in Japan in 2007. Some places say it was more popular than The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass due to being the most pre-ordered game in Japan, but I think that's a misunderstanding. It simply got to the top spot of pre-orders in Amazon for a little while. They were thankful for everyone getting it there in the first place, and at first, stores ran out of game units just by dealing with these pre-orders. Doki Doki Majo Shinpan 2 sold 21,000 units in 2008, and it was greenlit before the first game was even sold. Higher ups thought the game was interesting, so they requested a sequel. Doki Majo Plus sold 14,000 units in 2009, and it was made after the producer finished the second game and concluded the first game was lacking. There was also people who wanted to play, but it wasn't available anymore, so he was able to remake the first game with the second game format. And it seems he was also expecting it to not be that many copies produced, which is interesting because this might be responsible for why this is currently one of the most expensive DS games nowadays. In 2017, apparently he found it being sold for 600 yen, but now, 8 years later, that price rose to about 40 times that. If you don't mind, I want to list some differences between Doki Doki Majo Shinpan and Doki Majo Plus. Well, first and foremost, I am thankful it had an option mode at all, where you can choose the game to function with single tap or double tap, battle difficulty, and if the witch check mode is connected or separated, which worked wonderfully to get footage for this video. Volume control, which is appreciated since I always lower BGMs. The map was modified, and instead of having static round icons, it have these animated ones for each character. Important events are also marked in a red check mark. On the first game it wasn't very clear if anything would happen in there at all. The side stories are just better on this game. Characters like Shino and the class teacher didn't exist, and they helped to make the world more alive. Kiara is a whole new addition to the game, as well as the whole last chapter. The first game ends with Noelle really doing all that because she was pulling a tantrum and rejecting the idea she was in the wrong, even though deep inside she knew she was. It was actually interesting because on the marriage chapter, Noelle starts giving the group advice, but also uses the chance to start trauma dumping. The fights are more well developed, with opponents having more attacks, and the ultimate attack you can do is also a new addition. The whole Remake chapter was very different, but honestly at this point I don't remember anymore what the difference was. I just remember it was really short. I think she really did forget she was a witch, and the whole chapter is them trying to convince her of it. And after the witch trial she goes, "Oh yeah, my mom told me about something like this." Also, her fight intro is different too, because on the first game she can't get into it because she wasn't allowed to get her Athena cosplay.
衣装を着ないとやる気が出ないのですよ。やる気満々なのですよ。
The entirety of the witch trials were remade as well. It was made clearer if something you did was good or bad and if you were progressing. And on the original game, the only custom thing you could get was jiggle animations. Also, Mary is using a whole different costume and it hits you by surprise that she was in gym uniform the whole time. This is small, but on the first game, Xiao Mao of the school shop would eventually let you see her dress in one of the costumes seen on the wall. I chose school swimsuit. This wasn't available on Doki Majo Plus for some reason, or I just missed it, it's possible. And of course, Sweet's communication is a whole new thing to Doki Majo Plus. How'd you like the soundtrack? Every song you heard from this video came from Doki Majo Plus. I thought it was really good. I think I'm done. I was quite pleased with this game in general. Now I'm going to leave a bit of a bad taste on your mouth. I have created a Patreon. I have a bunch of tiers, but you should be able to get everything from the lowest one when I actually start putting stuff in there. If you don't want to support or can't, that is also fine. I'm thinking of putting people's names around here, answering some questions or reading some messages sent, and record some audio talking about behind the scenes stuff. I would appreciate if you considered. That's all I have to say. See ya!